Evening and welcome to the Wednesday, January 21st, 2026 regular meeting of the Ann Arbor Planning Commission. For detailed information on meeting procedures, please review the full printed meeting agenda, which is available at each end of the dais. I am Daniel Weich, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. Manager Kelly, would you please call the roll?
With pleasure. Commissioner Weich.
Here.
Commissioner Abrams.
Here.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Here.
Noting a planned absent by Commissioner Lee. Councilmember Dish.
Yes. Here.
Commissioner Mills.
Here.
Commissioner Weatherby.
Here.
Commissioner Adams.
Here.
And Commissioner Norton.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Manager Kelly. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Commissioner Abrams, seconded by Commissioner Weatherby. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 6th, 2026 meeting? Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Commissioner Mills. Is there any discussion of the minutes? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Next up are reports to the Planning Commission, written and written communications. We'll start with Councilmember Dish, if she is ready.
I am ready.
Excellent.
Last night, Council approved as a consent agenda item the 350 South 5th Development Agreement. And then there were the two UDC amendments that were moved forward to second reading, which are the bike and vehicle changes, about which I spoke quite eloquently, I will say. No, I'm just kidding. I threatened to go through all the details. And the UDC community participation with the signs, everybody was so delighted to see that. They've been waiting for it. And then also advanced was the 715 to 17 Huron rezoning to R4C. And I think that is everything. And then you might care about the fact that a vote on the Arbor South Brownfield plan was postponed, but it will be back in 2 weeks. So I hope to bring you good news.
Thank you, Councilmember Dish. Manager Kelly, do you have a report for us?
I do have a brief report. It is about personnel changes, and the first is that I'm happy to report that this is the second week of our new hire for site compliance coordinator. We have brought on Tracy Regala into this role, and this is a full-time position assisting developers in navigating their path to completion for certificates of occupancy, tracking outstanding development agreement items, and overall improving our customer service in an area of the development review process that touches many different parts of the city, areas of specialization, and we hope that this position, which is also funded across multiple service areas, but reports to Planning and Development Services, will be a wonderful gap filler in helping to make sure that when we are passing from developers on to the general contractor, that they are very clear on what was promised earlier in the development review period, and that they understand how to navigate the various departments that they need to talk to. So we're excited about that. And I would also like to, with thankfulness and a little bit of regret, share that our CTN specialist, Mike Koski, will be, this is his last Planning Commission meeting that he'll be supporting after 33 years with the city. So we thank Mike very much for being such a wonderful person behind the scenes. You've seen him pop out before or after, and sometimes during meetings to assist us. He's training Ryan Smith. So just want to thank him for his service.
Hear, hear. Do other commissioner officers or committee liaisons have anything to report? With the permission of the table, I'd like to give you an update on a meeting that Michelle Bennett, principal planner for the comp plan, and I had with Dr. Matthew Countryman, responding to John Hilton's comments about the comp plan. Is that okay? All right, so Michelle and I met with Dr. Countryman to walk through the concerns raised about the comprehensive plan's historical framing, particularly the claim that Ann Arbor should not be described as having participated in racial segregation because there is no evidence of explicit segregation laws. Dr. Countryman acknowledged the argument, but was clear that it reflected an incomplete and outdated understanding of how segregation functioned in the mid-20th century, especially in American cities like Ann Arbor. He emphasized that segregation was produced through a combination of formal policy choices and informal but widely accepted practices, including zoning, infrastructure decisions, house sitings, market steering, and municipal neglect, none of which required explicit segregation ordinances in order to be effective. Dr. Countryman further noted that the absence of surviving documentation does not absolve the city of responsibility and, in some cases, reflects the historical destruction or non-preservation of records, including the Federal Housing Administration redlining maps. And here I'll just make a quick comment, which is we discovered in our meeting that there were, Dr. Countryman argues that there was likely a FHA redlining map for the city of Ann Arbor, and it was probably destroyed as a part of the settlement of a lawsuit that was brought against the government, because the settlement required that the government destroy the redline maps. And as a historian, he has, through his research, found maps of cities of comparable sizes as well as smaller cities in the personal records of others. So that gives credibility to the fact that there were probably redline maps for the city of Ann Arbor. He affirmed that contemporary historical scholarship also treats lived experience, spatial patterns, and cumulative outcomes as valid and necessary evidence alongside formal records. Based on this discussion that we had, it was about an hour and a half or just under an hour, we're confident that the comp plan's historical language is accurate, it's appropriately scoped, and it aligns with current scholarship. And based on our conversation, Planner Bennett has made some small adjustments to improve the language, and you should see that in the next revision of the comp plan. Any questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Dish.
Did he not raise a particular concern about omission on the timeline of Ann Arbor's passing of an open housing ordinance?
Not in my memory, but I'll look in my notes before we end, and I'll come back to it during planning commissioner proposed business.
That's fine, and I'm not necessarily I thought that was in there. I'm not necessarily suggesting that we add that. That was an extremely contentious and complicated decision.
I'm sorry. So you meant Hilton.
Hilton.
Did Hilton raise that? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll look at his note and then get back to you.
Yeah. It's not for a material change, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you for your indulgence. This brings us to agenda item written communications are also included in today's packet. In order to retrieve those written communications, you have to go to a2gov.legistar.com. Go to the calendar, select the Planning Commission, and then go to the bottom of the page, because it's in reverse chronological order, and this is the second meeting of this year. Click on today's agenda, and then attached to today's agenda are all of the written communications that have been in our packet. So now, this takes us to agenda item number 6, public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals to speak for up to 3 minutes on issues not listed as a public hearing or a dedicated public comment period. We'll first hear from those of you who are present with us in chambers, then we'll turn to remote participants. To speak remotely, press star 9 if on phone, or use the raise hand feature if on Zoom. For phone access, please dial 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will identify callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number or by name if you're on Zoom. You will hear an announcement when it's your turn to speak. We ask that you move to a quiet area and that you mute any background noise. For all speakers, whether here in chambers or on Zoom, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present in chambers who'd like to address us at this time? You can come straight to the microphone. And good evening.
Good evening. My name is Donna Ainsworth, and I live at 1435 South Boulevard. I've lived there since 2001. And before that, I lived at 1411 South Boulevard since from 91 to 2001. I want to begin by thanking the Planning Commission and the city staff for the care that goes into reviewing complex petitions like the Woodbury petition. We appreciate the staff analysis and the work that's already gone in to tonight's materials. I'm here this evening to express general support for the thoughtful concerns many of my neighbors have raised regarding the Woodbury Gardens rezoning, REZ 240008, and the associated site plan. People in this area are engaged not because they oppose change, but because they care deeply about how growth is guided and how long-term planning goals are applied. In written correspondence...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is a dedicated public hearing on the agenda item, on the agenda tonight.
Okay, sorry.
There is a dedicated public comment section.
So you can just make your comments again, so we'll get to hear you
Should I say it
one
again?
more time.
Should I go ahead and say
no,
this?
No, you can. You will have to wait until the public hearing.
Thank you.
I was just listening intently. I wasn't paying attention to the fact that you were out of scope. Is there anyone who would like to speak generally and not on the Woodbury or the other petitions? Is it St. Paul's? Okay. Mr. Garber?
If you want.
No, I'm just acknowledging you're here. All right, great. Well, given that no one wants to share, let's see, do we have remote participants who'd like to address us?
There is one hand raised for phone number ending in 534. You have 3 minutes to address the Planning Commission.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolbert calling from 1202 Traver Street in the heart of Lower Town. I'd like to talk about some general concepts of PUDs, conditional zoning, and the comprehensive land use plan. I'm not an attorney. When I did write in previously about conditional zoning regarding a development called Southtown on State near Stimson, the couple of council members that I went to their coffee hour wouldn't discuss it because they claimed attorney-client privilege based on what was written to them. And no discussion was had about conditional zoning there with the public, unfortunately. So I want to emphasize that I'm not an attorney, and I'm not going to speak in any kind of legalese so that we don't need to revert to attorney-client privilege here. So the city has been getting conditional zoning wrong a lot, and it did in regards to Southtown and other developments. Initially, it wanted to get it wrong at the Garnet, but council majority in that case, at the time, the mayor was in a minority, and so council majority was able to get the right thing done there and not impose and not approve a development that had inappropriate zoning conditions. So zoning conditions are supposed to benefit the community, not merely the applicant. Simple additional market rate housing is not considered that kind of community benefit. Other things are. And I want to talk about what, again, as a layperson, the courts approving rezonings with conditions have held that such rezonings are invalid when found to primarily benefit an owner rather than a general welfare. And so what does that mean? For example, if you're zoned R4C and you're capped at 30 feet tall, and you ask for a different zoning that might give you 100, 200 feet, whatever, just making up some numbers, and you say, well, let me put a condition on that's only, say, 70 feet. Well, that's not right, because you're getting, as a developer, as the applicant, to go from 30 to 70 in that. You're getting the benefit. So it's a matter of measuring it against the status quo of the zoning, not measuring against the new zoning. And that's been gotten wrong a couple of times, including with Southtown. And the imposition of restrictive conditions usually benefits the surrounding properties and adversely affects the owner of the rezoned property. And so we always have to look at that as a measurement of who's benefiting, who's not benefiting. For example, again, in Southtown, there was R4C, an area that prohibited short-term rentals, non-owner occupied short-term rentals. By going to a different zoning that allowed unlimited short-term rentals, so the developer volunteered, because conditions have to be voluntary, to
Thank
reduce
you,
the number of short-term
Mr.
rentals, I think, on that
Stolberg.
property.
Thank you. Do we have other remote participants?
There are no more hands raised.
Given that, I will close the public hearing. We are moving on to agenda item number 7, communications from commissioners. Are there any? Seeing none, we'll go to Manager Kelly to hear about our public hearings scheduled for the next regular meeting.
After many queries of our staff asking if they had any petitions which could possibly be ready, I have found after many rounds of questioning that there are none which are ready. So although we, hate to see a perfectly good meeting go to waste, we do not have items to present for you for the comprehensive plan nor for petitions, and your planning managers recommend that we cancel that meeting, which can be done without a vote of the commission.
Thank you, Manager Kelly. We're on to item number 9, unfinished business. There is none, which brings us to 10A, other business, 495 Earhart Road, St. Paul Lutheran School site plan for City Planning Commission approval. A proposal to add 2,582 square feet building addition for a library, reconstruct and reconfigure the parking lot, and update the stormwater detention. No increase in the number of students is expected as a result of this work. It's currently zoned R1B, single family. We'll start with a presentation from the petitioner, followed by a staff presentation, and then a dedicated public hearing, and then we will take up the motion and have our discussion.
Fantastic.
Good evening.
Thank you all. My name is Yuli Sala. I am a senior project manager, licensed engineer with Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick. We are the engineers and architects of record for this project. With me, we have a whole team, both from St. Paul and my coworkers. So if there's any question that you may have that I may not know the answer to, I'll be happy to defer back there to get you those answers. A little bit of background from me. I've been doing this site planning, engineering, and laying out schools specifically for the better part of 12 years now, 15 years total experience. I do a lot of work for public schools in revamping their parking lots, revamping how the flow of traffic goes through the site to make it as safe as possible. And that varies based on the level of school you have, right? Elementary school is treated differently than a high school would be. So a lot of experience in that realm. My background is, like I said, civil engineer. Got my undergraduate at Purdue, then a master's at Detroit Mercy with a focus on architectural engineering, and then kind of just landed into this role and somehow got into something that I'm very passionate about, which is education. So it's great to work on projects that deal with this, and it makes it a lot easier to come in front of a planning commission with a school project than it does for a gas station or a Meijer. Trust me, I've been on that side as well. Also, as of I want to say now 8 months ago now, I was also a planning commission member in Berry County. Very different types of projects that you would see there, very different submittals, sometimes just literally on a piece of napkin that says I want to build a barn. So I've seen my fair share of planning commission submittals and different types of projects. This one specifically, I really hope this is a no-brainer, real easy project for you to look at, review, and hopefully recommend approval for. The school, St. Paul Lutheran School, was started in 1964, so we're looking at 62 years now of educating kids at this facility. Back, I want to say about 15 years ago, they expanded from just K through 8 to pre-K as well. Obviously, pre-K in the last decade or so has grown tremendously, as it should. So that's been a pretty good focus of the education community, just statewide and honestly nationwide. With that as well, with pre-K growing, one of the reasons or one of the prompts for initiating even this project was the old library is just outdated and just needs to be essentially revamped. So in the design of the project, we looked at to build a new library. That's the 2,500 square foot addition to the building. It's on the back side of the building on the north side, and repurpose the old library into another pre-K classroom. For pre-K, they have currently 87 students enrolled in it and 25 on the wait list. So that's practically 30% wait list, which is really high. And that's what also drove the project. We're looking at there's definitely a community need for expanded pre-K services in this facility. What that then did is it opened up okay, well, our parking lot is not really in great shape either, so we need to start addressing that. So we looked at redoing the parking lot and the layout to the parking lot, and I'm going to switch on the screen here. I'm going to go to the general site plan for this. So when we looked at redoing the parking lot, two things came to mind. The first one, just put it back exactly as is, same shape, most economical solution and the easiest solution for us, obviously, but not necessarily the right solution. When we look at elementary school, especially, or even younger, like pre-K drop-off, exchange is critical. When a parent comes in, they need to do a handoff, so they can't just stop at the side of the driveway, let off a 4-year-old out of the car to have them walk to the classroom, right? So they have to park, get out, get their kid, facilitate the handoff with the teacher. So that creates a need for some dedicated area, a space where pre-K specifically can get better and safer drop-off and pick-up environment. So on this site plan, at the north end, the very top, you see those parking spaces. I can see if I can point to those. Here specifically, this area right here, this portion of the driveway is intended for that pre-K service. And you can see it's separate, so when people come in, drive in, if it's for pre-K, they'll come up into this protected space. If it's general K through 8, they will go through the rest of the driveway. The driveway is one directional, 2 lanes. One is the drop-off lane, the other is a bypass, so like once you drop off, you get to the other lane and exit the site. The parking lot needed to be reconfigured as well, both in orientation, the size of the number of parking spaces was important. For schools, what in the 15 years I've been doing this, what I'm finding out is more and more parking is needed than what even state requirements are. It's just a shift in how parents drop off their kids. This school doesn't have buses, so that doesn't even come into play, but more and more parents will actively drive their kid to school, park, walk with them to the classroom, have that good morning, goodbye handoff, and then leave. Then in this facility, obviously when you get into more of the extracurricular activities, the evenings, there's a gym on the southwest portion of it, and then further south, that's not shown in this image, is soccer fields. So what we've been seeing currently with the parking lot that is currently there, which has spaces for 112 parking spaces, we've been seeing that the parking lot, one, gets completely full during events, during soccer events especially, but even in the indoor events. And the hazard that we've been noticing especially during soccer events is parents, once it's full, they will just start driving essentially and trying to park in the grass. And of course, parents inevitably will want to drive and park as close to the activity as possible. And that is the highest risk where we've got kids obviously traversing. General rule of thumb is don't fight human nature, design for it, which is why we have needed to add some parking spaces down here on the south end to accommodate for some additional parking for those needs. The driveway that you see heading all the way back here. That is a requirement for fire apparatus access. By adding this building addition right here, that triggers a requirement to make sure that we have a driveway that a fire apparatus can come all the way to essentially near the back of the school in case of emergency. So from a site plan logistics, those are really the major items. There's another part down here not shown on this sheet. There's an existing stormwater management area, a small detention pond. It's kind of a natural space. What we're looking to do, obviously as required by redoing the parking lot, is to work with that system and expand it as much as we can. So we're not completely destroying, obviously, the natural environment around it. We would just have to widen it a little bit to make it accommodate this needs. The parking lot for here has landscaped islands on it. We meet all of the requirements for development for this project. That's why I was saying I'm hoping this is a really easy project for you all, because all the requirements are met for it. We did reach out to community. The outreach as required was done as well. We had a couple neighbors respond back with some concerns. We've responded to those as well. I think we're in a pretty, like I said, straightforward, easy project here that for the community to make sure that we create a safe space for the kids first and foremost, but obviously the parents as they're dropping off their kids to school. So if you have any questions, like I said, here we'll open it up, and if you have any discussions, if there's an item that I've missed in your discussions that you have, I'd be happy to come back and either elaborate on that or answer any questions you may have. So
Great. We're going to move to the staff presentation, and then we'll have a public hearing, and then we'll have our discussion, and if we have questions, we'll call you up at that time. Planner Thatcher.
I have very little to add here.
Okay.
I just want to point out that there are no staff comments that haven't been addressed. Everything's taken care of, and staff recommends that the site plan be approved.
Thank you for your staff presentation. We will now have our dedicated public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals to speak up for 3 minutes on one item, on this item. Haha. We will first hear from those of you who are present in chambers, then remote participants. To speak remotely, press star 9 if on phone, or use the raise hand feature if on Zoom. For phone access, dial 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will identify callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number or by name if on Zoom. You'll hear an announcement when it's your turn to speak. Please move to a quiet area and mute any background sound. For all participants, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present in chambers who would like to address us on this matter? Oh, here comes Mr. Garber.
Thank you, Chair Weiss, for your encouragement. Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. Yeah, this is no objection to any of this, except that I never like to see more parking added when there's basically no more usage. Yeah, I guess I question whether you can't fight human nature, and I wonder if St. Paul has looked into ways to encourage ride sharing, carpooling, a school bus service, at least for older students, private. Is any of that a possibility? So these just occurred to me at this moment, and maybe that's also a concern of the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Is there anyone else in chambers who'd like to address us at this time? Seeing none. Manager Kelly, do we have remote participants who'd like to address us? We do not, so we shall close the dedicated public comment. I'll read the motion. The Ann Arbor City Planning Commission approves 495 Earl Hart Road Site Plan Version 5 dated November 26, 2025 as it complies with all applicable requirements of the Unified Development Code and other applicable laws, ordinances, and standards and regulations. Moved by Commissioner Hammerschmidt and seconded by Commissioner Mills. We are in discussion. Who'd like to kick us off? All right, Commissioner Norton.
I just have a question for staff. I'm looking at the one written comment that we got from Terry Oif. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. raises a number of concerns about glare. And I'm trying to go through the code and see if there's anything here, but I wonder, did you all review the concerns that were raised, and is the proposal in compliance with the sections that he's citing?
Yes, we did go through those and compared them to code, and it is in compliance. I think that the confusion is that we ordinarily don't want like building lights, structure lights, parking lot lights to shine into neighboring buildings. We want that as little as possible, but we don't regulate vehicular lights, car headlights that are pulling on and off of the site. So unfortunately, for this individual, that is not regulated as part of our code. And really, the way the driveway is laid out, it's not, in our opinion, causing a nuisance to the neighbors. There's enough distance and buffering in between the school parking lot and the neighboring houses. Yeah.
Okay.
Staff believes it's adequate.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mills.
Thanks. I'm curious if it sounds like the petitioner wanted to have more parking. If they did not necessarily desire that and just wanted to build the new library, does that require then updating kind of the site plan overall? I don't know how standards have changed since then, or is the would any of the site plan, the parking, I know we don't have parking requirements, obviously, but it's more like the landscaping islands and that kind of thing. That's a relatively new innovation in our code. Would that have been triggered just by the addition of the library, or is it because they want new parking that then everything gets brought up to code?
I would have to answer the first question, I would have to go back and look at the floor area of the building and figure out what percentage of
It's a
the
percentage.
library is. And I don't know that off the top of my head. But because the parking lot was being completely removed and rebuilt, that's what triggered all of the parking standards, the requirement for EV parking spaces, and everything else that's going on there.
Okay.
So we looked at it as a package.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was a lighter touch that they could have done, but they wanted to dig it up anyway. Okay.
Yep.
Any other commissioners? Yes. Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
I will just chime in to say my kids actually went to St. Paul for preschool, so I am intimately familiar with this, and I live close by and drive by every day. The parking lot does get full, so while I'm also not an advocate for, like, let's add more parking, I think the location of this site, and then the use, with sports events, the fact that there is a church also that takes place here, it sort of has to happen. I would encourage you to maybe look into, pervious pavement options potentially. But the addition of the angled parking for the preschool drop-off, having done lots of preschool drop-off, like that, you would have to cross like cars coming before. So this, I think, for the little kids is like amazing for safety. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just wanted to share that it would, at a minimum, have been a site plan for planning manager review because the size of the addition was between 300 and 10,000 square feet.
Thank you, Manager Kelly. Are we ready to vote? Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, on the motion as presented, Commissioner Weish,
Yes.
Abrams,
Yes.
Hammerschmidt,
Yes.
Dish,
Yes.
Mills,
Yes.
Weatherby,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Norton.
Yes.
That carries.
Thank you, and good luck with your project. That brings us to item 10B, regular business, 1310 Wisteria. This is the the Woodbury Gardens rezoning, RE Z24-008 and 1310 Wisteria Site Plan, SP240013 for City Council approval. Woodbury Gardens proposes to rezone the existing 41.29 acre development that includes Astor Drive, Wisteria Drive, and Woodbury Drive from R3 multifamily, R4 multiple family, and PL public land districts to TC1 transit corridor with conditions, capping the building height. The site plan project would partially redevelop one parcel to construct 2 7-story buildings containing 342 dwelling units and a 5-level parking garage. An administrative land transfer is required and will be considered separately. We'll start with a petitioner presentation, followed by a staff presentation, followed by a public hearing, and then our discussion on the motion.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Brad Moore,
Good
local
evening.
architect, representing the petitioner, and I have with me here as well the lead architect who will run through the parameters and the design of the project. Our civil engineer is en route, so I hope that he gets here before the end of the public hearing. But Ray will walk you through how we've crafted this integration of modern housing with a more efficient land use behind it to make a overall density increase in this project of around 57%. So we're finding a way of integrating new units with existing units, making much more efficient use of land, helping to address the housing shortage in the city.
Good evening, Ray Phillips with Krieger Klatt Architects. Put together a brief presentation for you tonight. I want to thank you for your time here tonight. First couple slides are more talk more about the civil, which, as Brad mentioned, civil engineers en route here. So I'm going to slide by a couple of these first slides here and kind of get into some of the slides that we put together from an architectural standpoint. So project is located south Stadium Boulevard between Industrial Highway and Packard. It's an existing apartment townhouse complex, which is outlined in blue here. The portion that we are proposing this project on is just the yellow highlighted area. Project synopsis, as mentioned, we're looking to rezone to TC1. This is a 2-phase project. Phase 1 contains 127 dwelling units. Then Phase 2 is an additional 215 units with the parking structure. No demolition of existing buildings are required for Phase 1. We have a good mix of studios, 1-bed, 2-beds, and townhouses, which gives a wide variety of options for future residents. We have ample amenity space, both interior and exterior. Phase 1 has a modest clubhouse of 2,700 square feet, handles all the day-to-day mail, package, small lobby. Still needs to be fully programmed, but that's kind of the accessory clubhouse for the Phase 1, which you'll see is just a rectangular building. Phase 2 requires demolition of the existing clubhouse. So there's a much larger 9,000 square foot interior clubhouse and then also an exterior amenity space. We are proposing 456 parking spaces in the garage, including ADA spaces. There are 8 new surface spaces. We're reworking some of the existing site for an overall gain of 464 parking spaces, and we are meeting the bike parking requirements. This is a, oh, there you go. Uh-oh. Freezing on me. This is a aerial rendering kind of the overall site plan. So as you can see here in orange is the Phase 1 building, rectangle building that's going with the existing. I believe there's some green space and outdoor dog park in this area. No demolition of existing buildings. Phase 2 consists of the purple, which is the apartment building, and the blue, which is the parking garage. Both of these apartment buildings are double-loaded corridors, which means you have a corridor running down the middle and you have units on each side. The only place that doesn't happen is on the left or west side of the parking garage. 2 things I wanted to point out here. there is a blue arrow on the right-hand side here that connects phase 1 to phase 2. This will obviously happen as phase 2 is completed. This happens on floor 3 only to provide connection from the parking garage to the phase 1 units as well. And then the second one is this orange line here just kind of indicates on the first floor, right in this area, which I'll get to later, we are splitting the building. There's a 10-foot wide by 2-story tall pedestrian breezeway. So one of the items that I'm sure we'll get into discussion here is the overall length of the building on Astor Avenue. We're trying to meet the intent of the TC1, enhancing pedestrian walkability through the site. We thought that this helped with that, and think it's a good play for the overall development. Here we have the first floor plan. Big picture here, as I mentioned, double-loaded corridor building. We have the clubhouse, which is shown in orange. In phase 1, we have the small clubhouse located here at the south. And then phase 2, we have 2 clubhouses. This one that's over here is 2 stories tall. It's going to overlook the pool, the outdoor amenity space. So this is really the main feature in the phase 2. Highlighted in yellow here is that pedestrian breezeway that I mentioned that literally splits the building in half on floors 1 and 2. The curb cut that's along the north here is existing and will remain. There is a curb cut on this right-hand side, roughly in this location, that'll be demolished and moved down here. This is where the vehicular circulation will happen around this phase 1 building, and then it also allows access into the parking garage. This is floor 2, very similar to the first floor plan that I was just talking about. Just want to talk about, again, the yellow highlighted areas, that pedestrian breezeway. And we have this, as I mentioned, the 2-story clubhouse. Most of these units here are townhouse units. So on the first floor, we have patio space. On the first floor, you can walk into these units right off the street. And then they're townhouse units, so they have interior staircases going up. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of different opportunities for studios, 1-beds, townhouses. This is very close to the typical floor plan. The thing that I want to point out here on the third floor plan is we do have this pedestrian bridge running across here, connecting phase 1 and phase 2. And then as you can see in here, this is where this phase 2 connects on the upper floor. That pedestrian breezeway is on floor 1 and 2. Here's our typical floor plan with the parking garage in the middle. This stacks up from floors 4 through 6. And then on floor 7, this is where on this west side, we have an interior top floor amenity space for all residents. And then there's an outdoor deck as well, overlooking the pool, outdoor amenity space, just giving a lot of opportunities for people to enjoy. Next, we have 4 isometric renderings, kind of shows the building context with the surrounding area. So these are from all 4 major corners. And then next, we have some perspective renderings. And this one I think is kind of key. This shows where the pool, clubhouse, everything meets. This is the 2-story clubhouse here. This is that upper floor, 7th floor clubhouse area with the outdoor patio overlooking the amenity space. One thing I want to point out here, as I mentioned, we'll probably have more discussion about this, is this building face that's back here is set back over 100 feet from this face on Astor Avenue. And here's a perspective down at the ground level. The things I want to point out here is the building materials. We're looking for low maintenance, durable materials, a mix of multiple colors of brick, cast stone, metal panels, and fiber cement panels. This is the view from the south. This is that pedestrian breezeway here. I wish I could have lightened this up so it doesn't look as dark as it is in here, but this is to provide access for pedestrians to get through. And this is that portion of the building that is over 100 feet stepped back. This is a view from the southeast corner. So this is the phase 1 building on the right side here. And then this is the portion of the second phase building. And here's a perspective from the vehicular access on the east side. This is that third floor bridge connecting phase 1 and phase 2. And that's all I have for our presentation. Scott, I don't know if you want to jump in here.
You have 40 seconds remaining.
40 seconds.
All right, then.
Trying to go on that.
So this is a very unique opportunity that I would consider a win-win for everybody. It's a win for the property owners because they can...
I'm sorry, Scott, can you pause for a second? Planning manager, can we extend some time? Because it'll chime in the middle of your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I'll disrupt you, but not the chime. Go ahead.
Thanks. It's a win for the property owner in that they can replace some of their existing facilities with new, modern, and efficient facilities. And it's a win for the city in that we're going to be removing a total of 33 units from this development and replacing them with 242? 342, excuse me. So it's a factor of 10. And it's an existing site. We're not taking a green site out of circulation. So this is really, it really is a kind of a boon. It's a factor of 10 in the density in this area. And in addition to that, we're going to be providing underground stormwater retention, which doesn't exist on the site currently. We're going to be contributing $220,000 to the rehabilitation and redesign of one of the adjacent parkways. We're contributing $25,000 to a mid-block crossing and stadium for pedestrians. And so I think that this is really a very, very unique opportunity that doesn't come along very often, and we're very supportive of it. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We will now turn to Planner Thatcher for the staff report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. First off, in Legistar, there is, in the packet attachments, there's an additional memo that was just added today. I didn't print it out for all of you, but it was the most common questions that we've received via email, put together in one memo with answers, and I sent those out to people who asked questions via email today so that they would have, hopefully, their answers, their questions answered and more. First, I want to talk about the zoning, the rezoning part of this. Yesterday, Commissioner Adams raised a question about whether the zoning change could be advanced separately from the site plan. So if the site plan were not recommended by the Planning Commission for approval, could the zoning still move forward with a recommendation of approval? And the answer is yes. And the staff report was framed that completely differently because we learned this yesterday. So to clear that up, it turns out that if the site plan is not recommended for approval, the requested TC1 zoning could still be advanced with a recommendation of approval. Now, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you, is that okay? I would appreciate it. All right, go ahead, Planner.
2 points on this topic that are specific to this. Staff still recommends that the applicant provide a site plan or an area plan that conforms to the zoning that they're requesting, because you want to make sure that they're able to do that. And if you change the zoning and it's not really what they want out of the whole project, then they have a zoning district, and it may be more difficult or expensive for them to put together a new site plan. But, so we still do recommend that go along with it. However, should you all decide that you would like to split these two up, the zoning gets a recommendation of approval, the site plan gets a recommendation of denial, staff strongly recommends that you leave all of the conditions proposed in place. Please, please. It's very important, and here's why. One of the, let's see, what are they called? There are purpose statements for TC1 zoning, and one of them says that the site should be surrounded by O, C3, M1, or a couple other districts. The site's about half surrounded, and not surprisingly, it's the half on the western side closest to South Industrial Boulevard. The other half of the site is surrounded by R1 and R2, single-family zoning and duplex zoning. So the reason that the TC1 conditions are important is it would lock in for 300 feet all of the zoning on the north side and the east side of the site, and have a maximum height of 35 feet. Right now, those buildings are mostly 30 feet. So this is an incremental difference. It's a difference, but it's not the 75 feet that TC1 would normally allow, pretty close to those districts. So I think that the conditions are really important to mitigating these effects. And now let me talk about the site plan. It doesn't meet the maximum building width requirement. We've been, this is sort of unusual that a site plan would come to you guys at this point with a dimensional problem like this, but the building, the code says the building width parallel to the street may not exceed 300 feet. That's it. To measure the width of a building, we look at what's parallel to the street, draw a box around the whole site, and see how wide it is. It doesn't matter if there's a 100-foot setback from the street or a 1,000-foot setback from the street. We still have to measure the building at the widest part of that box. It's how we've been doing it for decades, and that's why staff has recommended disapproval of the site plan and the zoning with it, because of what I said earlier, because it does not meet this dimensional requirement. Plain and simple. I'm not going to dwell on that, but there is an illustration in the staff report that shows what I'm talking about. I'm at 354 feet approximately. It's not dimensioned, so that's me, measuring it with a ruler and trying to figure it out. But you can see that that they have a couple of dimensions on here, and you can see that that's roughly accurate. The applicant has chosen to use the 283 feet that is closest to the street, but staff measures it, everything that's parallel to the street, all the way to the other side of the building. So we're at 354. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Thatcher. All right, we now have an opportunity for a public hearing on this matter. This is an opportunity for individuals to speak up to 3 minutes on this item. We'll first hear from those of you who are present in chambers. Then we will turn to remote participants. To speak remotely, press star 9 if on phone, or use the raise hand feature if on Zoom. For phone access, dial 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will identify callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number or by name if on Zoom. You'll hear an announcement when it's your turn to speak. Please move to a quiet area and mute any background noise. For all participants, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present in chambers who'd like to address us at this time?
Hello, my name is Sam Homan. I live right by Woodbury Gardens at 1451 Kohler Road. I walk through the site every day, and I have some opinions about this proposal. I want to start off by saying Woodbury Gardens has been a very good neighbor to have, and they maintain the site exceptionally well. I support the redevelopment of the R4 sections of this site, and I think it needs some targeted modifications. First, the buffer area that's currently zoned R3 needs to stay residential and not converted to mixed use. Converting it to TC1 doesn't just change the height, it changes the uses allowed, and these are very large parcels. So I would ask the petitioner to modify the conditional zoning that the R3 sections be only used for, or the current R3 sections only be used for residential. Second, I would ask that you uphold the 300-foot building standard. TC1 is designed to create walkable grid-style blocks, not mega blocks. Third, address rooftop noise. I would ask that the petitioner make a binding commitment not to place a clubhouse above the second floor or to fully enclose any clubhouse or amenity space above a second floor. Sound from the 7th-story clubhouse has the potential to carry far and wide and cause nuisances in this area. We see this already with electronic announcements from the university's lacrosse stadium on State Street. Those echo all through the neighborhood when they're playing games. Fourth, I would ask the petitioner to commit to 4 pedestrian improvements as part of the plan, a new pedestrian path to South Boulevard, like what they've done with Color, which has been wildly successful, a new pedestrian path to Iroquois Park, and a pedestrian-sized cut in the fence there, the chain link fence they have, a pedestrian path across the parcel zone PL to Venue. And finally, to clean up the sidewalk on the south side of Woodbury Park, which is currently overflown with dirt and completely impassable. Fifth, I would ask the petitioner to consider purchasing the vacant lot at 1972 South Industrial, which we don't have that map up there anymore, but it's directly across from Woodbury Gardens. It's vacant, and ideally they would place their parking garage there. That would solve a lot of problems. It's next to the Army Reserve Center and a strip mall and back to the railroad tracks. It's the perfect place to put a parking garage. And then finally, I just wanted to comment to the Planning Commission. This proposal really illustrates the problem with these very large setbacks you've designed. If you have a 300-foot setback, it necessitates rezoning this entire site, and the R3 section should not be zoned TC1. TC1 was never supposed to cover our zones. So this is pretty abusive of the zoning as it is. I understand why they're doing it, but you've created this weird situation with setbacks. If you're going to do a setback of probably more than 65 feet, you need to probably create different zones like you did with D1 and D2. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come up now? And I'm sorry for not stopping you sooner.
That's okay.
My apologies.
Donna Ainsworth. I live at 1435 South Boulevard. I've been there since 2001. Before that, I lived next door at 1411 South Boulevard since 1991. So I want to thank the Planning Commission and the city staff for their careful analysis, because these are complex plans. I'm here to express general support for the thoughtful concerns many of our neighbors have raised regarding the Woodbury Gardens rezoning and the associated site plan. We are engaged not because we oppose change, but because we care deeply about how growth is guided and how long-term planning goals are applied. In written correspondence, the city staff noted that an important equity goal is to encourage a greater variety of unit types, such as duplexes, triplexes, and different forms of multifamily housing in order to support residents at different stages of life. Many of us appreciate that goal and share it. As the commission reviews this proposal, we hope that lens is applied carefully, particularly as the plan would remove existing lower-scale residential buildings in favor of a very different housing form. I want to emphasize that the neighbors are informed, respectful, and engaged. Many have read the staff report, submitted written comments, and are participating in good faith. We appreciate the opportunity to be part of a constructive public process, and thank you for listening to us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers?
Hello, my name is Jeff Terrell. I live at 1310 Iroquois Place, which is just north of this project. My wife and I, Linda and I, have been living there for 32 years now, and we've enjoyed this very unique street, if you're familiar with it. Very friendly neighborhood, and the great feel about our block, which is widely recognized for those in the South Park area as being quite special, not just for our speed bumps, but for many other reasons. Woodbury Gardens, as you know, started off as a University of Michigan botanical gardens, and in its current style and configuration, it blends nicely with the neighborhood, our neighborhood just north of it. But and aesthetically, the townhouse structures are not a large jump in size from our residential street just north of it. But I'm concerned that rezoning would allow in the future 5 to 7 story buildings like this that would abut right up against for the most part, single-family homes. And I'm also concerned about infrastructure fatigue. We've had a lot of water and sewage and footing disconnect projects and in the neighborhood, in the past several years, and as well as a sewer lift station work apparently. But nevertheless, our street routinely floods far enough that cars are stalling out and being damaged, especially on the west side of our street. So in general, we're just not in favor of the site plan proposal, or particularly the change in the zoning. But if by chance this should pass, the zoning request in particular should pass, and the site should be approved, I'd like to respectfully ask the city to require more meaningful edge protection for the homes along Iroquois Place, with a buffering described in Section 520, with a continuous line, perhaps of evergreen trees along that area, the north area, that were of substantial height and planted on the Woodbury side of the site, and away from the DTE lines, which they're trimming all the time, trees there. So we wouldn't want evergreens to go up and then have to be trimmed as soon as they reach a substantial height. And finally, we'd like to thank the planning staff, Jill, and others for the hard work on this and for identifying pertinent technical constraints. Thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Dee Lamphere. I live at 1307 Iroquois Place. Thank you for allowing me and my neighbors to come and talk to you about this project. I sent an email. I'm not going to go back over that because I know it's easier to read than for me to talk about. But my husband and I and our 2 daughters have lived on Iroquois for almost 20 years. So we've been there for quite a while. We were there before the Stadium Bridge construction happened. And since that construction, my side of the street, which is the west side, has flooded several times each summer. My across the street neighbor, I think, flooded 2 of her cars trying to just get into her driveway. And I am the closest to the storm drain, so I'm always the person out there with my rake and digging out the storm drains and trying. But really, it's kind of futile because the water level is above the drains. So you really have to just kind of wait for the water to drop below before the real pull can start happening. And this flooding has happened way more since the Stadium Bridge has been built and that water is all flowing down to our street. So it makes me anxious about hearing about impervious structures like multi-story parking garages that are going to, not going to absorb the same amount of rainwater that's coming. And so I would encourage that if this is a plan that you're going to approve, that you do a very governed by code stormwater review and a study of the impervious structures that are being proposed and how that's going to contribute to what we know is already a known flooding issue in that area. And my other concerns were some of the ones that Jill was mentioning earlier related to the Planning Commission staff cautions against exceeding your design maximum building width under the TC1. But also, I question if rezoning this lot to TC1 really makes sense based on the fact that it's R3 and R4 designed or zoned areas currently. And from my reading of how TC1 evolved, it was for areas where there isn't a lot of development or residential. Like, there aren't people living there. There's families that live there, obviously, right now and walk their dogs through our neighborhood every day. And we have, I know many people who just walk down our street with their dogs, and I've gotten to meet them, and we have a community that we've built between the Woodbury Garden residents and the residents on Iroquois Place and the surrounding neighborhoods that abut it. I walk through Woodbury Gardens all the time with my family just to get my steps. So thank you for listening. That's my time.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm James Ashton Miller. I live at 1314 Iroquois Place, where I've lived for 45 years. And on one time that Dee didn't rake the storm drain clear, I raked it clear, and I found a $20 bill.
What good luck.
So I'm here to respectfully ask you for a traffic and congestion reality check. How many additional cars, with a tenfold increase in capacity, in the unit capacity that's being proposed, given the Woodbury proximity to stadia, to schools and major surface parking facilities, our local streets operate near capacity. I'd like to emphasize the need for neighborhood access and emergency response. Density should reduce congestion, not concentrate it into nearby congestion corridors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Is this going? Okay.
It is.
Hello, my name is Corinne Thompson. I live at 1208 Astor Avenue, which is in the designated planning zone. I got my little public hearing notice, and I have decided to come. And I think in general I am on board for upgrading the zoning, although I am wondering why it was not upgraded. The proposal was not to upgrade it along the existing industrial highway, as that is where the bus routes are. That's where access to like all the businesses are. That's where that's where I walk along the corridor to industrial highway. And I think if we're going to upgrade to a transit corridor, that would probably be the place where it would make the most sense to. I am broadly in favor of upgrading zoning to include different dimensions of housing and allowing for businesses. The build of the structure itself, I am not to that. The structure itself, I think, as far as access for me, I think it would be good to have more unit options, and I think it would be nice for there to be, in general, more renting options available, because I end up having to scoot around different places when rent gets too high. I think it would be, my main concern with whenever redevelopments like this happen is they get priced as like luxury for having like granite countertops and things, and that adds like an extra $500 on top of it. So it doesn't so it's functionally a basic apartment, but it doesn't have, it's more expensive, and brand new apartments tend to be even more expensive. So I think that would be my main concern as far as like affordability and being able to and the different types of units available. Because currently I live on Astor, and I am at 860 square feet for $1,600 a month. It's a little brutal, and I don't see that. And I think more units would help bring prices down for older units, but I worry about the cost for newer units. And those were my main points.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Ruby Summers. My husband and I live at 1411 South Boulevard, which directly abuts Woodbury Gardens. We've lived there since 2020, but this house is also very special to me because I grew up on the street, spent 0 to 8 in this house, moved next door, that's my mom, and then we bought the house a few years back. So I love Ann Arbor. I've loved this neighborhood. As you heard, I've lived here my whole life, and but many of my friends can't find housing in Ann Arbor, can't afford housing in Ann Arbor. They all go to Ipsy, which then, moves other people out of Ipsy, which is also a problem, but we won't get into that. So all of this to say, I'm really in support of more housing in Ann Arbor, but I do feel that when you're creating more density, it's really essential that the new residents are integrated into the community and the neighborhood, and I'm really concerned that having 2 interior towers will create enclaves, and that those residents will be isolated from the rest of the neighborhood. As you heard, I know all these people by their dogs. I don't know their names. But, my dog's really obsessed with Humphrey, his dog. And I'm concerned that all of these folks will feel isolated. Additionally, the 7-story podium buildings are expensive to build and often require luxury tier rents to remain viable. Ann Arbor already has a lot of luxury apartment apartment buildings, but what I feel we really need is the missing middle housing, and I think a 3 to 4 story building on the site would have much more reasonable rents and better scale into the existing neighborhoods, and I think that would also help create more social mobility for Ann Arbor's workforce, many of whom can't live here. Finally, the Transit Corridor District was intended to transform gray fields, and I think using it in this case on a site that's an established residential community is not in alignment with the TC1 intent. I urge the Commission to recommend a scaled back 3 to 4 story alternative that aligns with the missing middle principles we need for a truly inclusive Ann Arbor. This allows us to welcome new neighbors without setting a 7-story precedent for the remaining 41 acres. Thanks so much to the staff and for all of you for your work and your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Fingerly, and I live at 1316 Iroquois Place. Laura Fingerly, my wife, and I submitted written comments that are included in tonight's agenda under item 5D, and tonight I want to briefly address the findings of my FOIA request that was recently completed. The FOIA was filed to better understand the process followed ahead of a requested permanent rezoning decision of this scale, and I want to stress that rezoning is permanent. It's not just a trial run. What the FOIA response shows most clearly is not what was found, but rather how the project was structured during the pre-application phase. The internal planning emails released by the city show extensive coordination focused on how to advance a rezoning of multiple parcels while submitting a detailed site plan for only one parcel. Those emailed documents discussed waiving an area plan requirement for most parcels, streamlining filings, and sequencing rezoning ahead of a site-specific review. What they do not show is early resolution of the substantive questions residents have raised tonight: building scale across the full site, visual and contextual impacts, infrastructure capacity assumptions, or traffic effects. That matters because zoning is legislative and permanent. When the internal record emphasizes procedural efficiency over site-wide analysis, it increases the risk that the Commission is being asked to approve a zoning framework before the impacts it enables are fully documented. The FOIA also confirmed that there is no design review board record, no historical land use agreement on file, and no documentation linking infrastructure upgrades to specific density assumptions, which further concentrates responsibility for completeness at this stage. None of this reflects bad faith, but it does indicate that critical context is still missing from the public record. When residents need to use FOIA to piece together background information for a rezoning, it's often a sign that the decision is moving faster than the supporting documentation. I appreciate staff's careful technical review and the clarity of the recommendation, and I respectfully ask the Planning Commission not to advance this rezoning until the outstanding information is fully documented and available for public review. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Katie Devoto, and I'm a newer resident of Ann Arbor. So I live at 1408 Iroquois, and I've been there for a year and a half. And I want to first begin by thanking all of you. I saw the number of emails and things that have come through. I saw your analysis, Jill, the FAQ. Very much appreciate it. And also, it was, as somebody new to Ann Arbor, I wasn't sure if all of our emails were going to make it into the committee packet, so that gives us confidence that this is a collaborative process. So tonight, there's been many people who have spoken. I think that there's a common theme that people support, that we do have a housing crisis, that we do want to improve ways to form density, to make sure that it's equitable. I did do some research into the developer. This is a developer known for high-end luxury housing. It's beautiful. The site plan is beautiful. I moved from Chicago. I know luxury housing. It looks great. This is not affordable. That was in the FAQ. That is not something that's been submitted. Looking at the stats, 71% are studio or one bedroom. I'm curious as to who our target audience is for this complex and how that fits into what we are solving for Ann Arbor. I heard a resident that I have not met that they're looking for housing. This would not meet the price limit, I fear, for them. And when we talk about rezoning, this is 41 acres made up of 2 different zones, all 41 acres being proposed to be a transit. There are houses there. There are homes there. They will be demolished. There's an email from the residents of Woodbury. These are owners. They are not in favor of this. This does not benefit them. This likely will bring revenue and profit to the city, but I don't think that it is at the core and the heart of what we are trying to solve. So please, please encourage us to look at it. There are one consistent theme is that there's a lot of outstanding questions. There's a lot of data that has not been provided. So to put you in the seat to have such a meaningful, lasting, permanent decision, you're likely being asked to make a decision without all the complete data. That you have an incredible responsibility, something that lasts not just today, not just weeks, not just years, but decades. I moved from Chicago. I have a second grader and kindergartner. We chose Ann Arbor because of the community, because of our values. I encourage you all to make a decision to keep that everlasting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers who'd like to address us at this time? Come right up.
Scott Betzel, Midwestern Consulting. I just heard a couple of things that I wanted to offer some responses to before you went to the people that are waiting offline. Stormwater and flooding. As I mentioned before, we will be providing stormwater detention for this new redevelopment with groundwater infiltration. So the stormwater situation will be improved. And in addition to the stormwater from this entire site leads to the south and is discharged into a county drain that runs along the south property line. But if the Iroquois storm sewer happens to run through this, it will undoubtedly improve it because we'll be holding back water and all won't get into the pipe at the same time. So traffic, I heard some concerns about traffic. This site currently is a lot of people using the public transportation system. It's ideally situated along 2 major routes that has bus stops, and they have, in the recent years, they've adopted a 30-passenger van that constantly runs all day long, taking their residents to and from different areas of the city. Infrastructure adequacy, I heard concern about that. Our client did pay $28,000 to the City of Ann Arbor's consultant to do a sanitary sewer analysis, and it approved to be adequate to handle this new development, as well as the water capacity has been determined to be adequate as well. So just want to offer those up right now.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if it is appropriate for the developer to be speaking during this time since they have a dedicated...
And the last time I brought this up, Manager Leonard said that they are members of the public and they are entitled to the 3 minutes. So I'm happy to defer to you because you are the manager that is here tonight. So if you want me to ask Mr. Moore.
If you would like to defer to me, I would prefer that.
Great. All right, Mr. Moore, we'll have you
questions.
come back when we ask the questions. That was the only reason why I permitted it, because I tried it the last time and I was told no. Is there anyone else other than the developers in the room who would like to address the commission at this time?
Hello, my name is Andrea Blazer, and I live at 1335 Astor Avenue, so we are talking directly about my home.
Mine is one of the buildings that will be demolished for this project, and I'm trying to not let that overly color and bias the way I think about this project, because I generally love living at Woodbury Gardens. I chose this community for a reason. I have lived there for over 6 years now, and I'm going to apologize right now because I had lovely notes written down and they were lost into a snowdrift on my walk into the building. So I apologize. I had all the zoning codes and everything written down specifically, and I'm going to have to go off memory. But I just want to echo what a lot of my neighbors are asking and talking about and say, who is this project for? My neighbors and I have been discussing this at length, and we're talking to our leasing complex, and we're talking to the owners of this building going, where are we going to go when you tear down this building? Because we will not be able to afford to move into the new building. We can barely afford to live there as it is. And I also want to ask this committee, how many of you would want to have 342 neighbors in your building? This is a very specific type of building. We're seeing a lot of them go up in Ann Arbor, and I'm really hoping it does address some of the housing crisis that the students of the University of Michigan are facing. I do not want to downplay that, nor the housing crisis that people who are beyond their college years are facing. Because this type of housing, let me be very blunt, I'm going to speak very directly, this is for students. This is the type of housing we are talking about, not people who are in their 30s and 40s who are trying to just make their way through life in Ann Arbor. I chose this community very specifically because it felt very residential. I'm not in a position to buy a house, and I wanted something that gave me as much of a residential life as I could. It's why I love walking down Iroquois and meeting the neighbors there. I love walking through our neighborhood. If I wanted to live in a building like it's being described, I would have moved downtown, right? And we have a lot of options to do that. We have a lot of those buildings coming up. So I apologize that I don't have my more concise notes here, but I wanted to thank everybody for the very careful and critical consideration this is being given. And again, ask what problem are we trying to solve, and does this building actually solve it? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers who'd like to address us at this time?
Thanks, Chair Weiss. Ken Garber again. Start with a question about parking. There's a discrepancy. We just heard from the petitioner that there will be 456 spaces in the parking garage plus 8 surface spaces, but the site plan that I read refers to 456 plus 72 surface spaces assigned to this building, for a total of 528. So I'm not sure if we're talking about 464 spaces or 528 spaces for this building. Either way, they're going to serve 342 units, so it's either 1.3 spaces per unit or 1.5. Either way, in my opinion, this is too much parking for a transit-oriented development, which is the zoning that's requested. Look instead at the Briarwood Mall apartments that replace the Sears store. Similar design with apartments in a donut configuration around a parking structure. There they have 354 units, a little bit more than Woodbury, with a 301 space parking deck. So 0.8 spaces per unit. So I think this is way overparked for a transit-oriented development. Why should we care? Because it adds embedded carbon, it increases building and maintenance costs, which translates to higher rents, and it encourages vehicle use, contrary to the intent of TC1. I read in the staff report that the petitioner is committed to building electrification, which is great. Curious what kind we're talking about. VRF, most efficient. VTAX, less so. Hot water-based or resistance, even less efficient. Curious what they're thinking. Hopefully VRF. And a question about the timing of this petition. This is the same ownership group that owns the Owl Creek Apartments on Nixon Road, which you'll remember came before you 2 years ago for rezoning from R4A to R4D, along with a site plan for a 131-unit apartment building. It's just a short jog from my apartment. Nothing has happened since that approval. I stopped by the leasing office today. They said they had no knowledge of any construction plans imminent. So why this proposal tonight when they haven't moved forward with the Owl Creek project? So that's just a question about building strategy. And by the way, on Owl Creek, they made a verbal commitment to achieving Energy Star multifamily new construction certification. In addition to building electrification, we didn't hear anything like that tonight about this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Is there anyone else in chambers? Manager Kelly, do we have remote participants?
We do. Phone number ending in 534. You have 3 minutes to address the Planning Commission.
Hello again, this is Tom Stolberg. I want to set a baseline. If this was done as a planned unit development, a PUD, my understanding is there would be a 15% contribution of affordable housing, which would be a little over 50 units. But I'm not sure on the calculation if you subtract out the units that are being demolished. But let's assume about 50 or maybe a little less. And then all the conditions could be in there. The site plan not meeting TC1 could be in there. You can do a lot with PUD here. Now let's set another baseline. R3 has a maximum of 35 feet and R4 has a maximum of 30 feet. So setting conditions and zoning conditions of 35 feet where it's R3 inappropriate. That's one way to do it. But where the R4 is, if you have any height in your conditions over 30 feet, again, that I mentioned earlier at the beginning, that would be wrong. That's not how you do zoning conditions. You don't get more than the status quo. You don't get a rezoning to a higher height and then reduce that to something above the status quo. The courts are very clear on that. And so why do the courts say that? Well, somebody else could come in and ask for a TC1 zoning in a very similar situation, very proximate to this. And because zoning conditions are voluntary, they don't have to volunteer these same limits. So they could get the maximum. And the problem is the city would be hard-pressed to turn them down, even though each zoning application is evaluated on its own merits individually. The courts have, again, been very clear that, no, you kind of surrender your police power. You would have no chance at defending that lawsuit. So that's why the conditions are inappropriate. The simple fact is the courts say they're not. Why is an explanation in layperson's terms here of how you put us, the city, in a quandary. You know, we're the citizens who are going to have to pay for the attorney out of our tax dollars in a losing lawsuit if somebody else files based on you doing the wrong thing here. That's what the courts mean when they say surrender police power. So I urge you to reject this, and you have some choices. The applicant could resubmit as a planned unit development with this exact same plan they have now, and we get the affordable housing. Or there's other things mentioned in the staff report as alternatives, but you simply cannot approve this as is, as submitted, because the conditions are inappropriate. And the courts have clearly ruled on this, and some of you have received documentation that confirms that thoroughly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stolberg.
Our final hand raised is Rich Fine. You have 3 minutes to address the Planning Commission.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Rich Fine, 618 Duane Court. Here representing the Ann Arbor chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. Just echoing Mr. Garber's comments about the heating of the units. We're requesting that the developer provide more details regarding the HVAC system. Is it resistive heat, heat pumps, VRFs? We'd just like to know what level of efficiency they're planning for this. We do applaud that they are planning to make it all electric in compliance with our carbon neutrality goals. We're also wondering, there's mention in the staff report of electric appliances and HVAC, but there's nothing stated about domestic hot water. So we were wondering what type of heat source and technology they're going to be using for that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fine.
There are no more hands raised virtually.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing and advise my colleagues that I have a updated script which splits the motion into two proposals, and I'd like to take those and present them separately for our discussion without objection. Okay. So the first motion is the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission recommends that the mayor and the city council approve 1310 Wisteria Site Plan Version 5 dated November 19, 2025, and the development agreement contingent upon an approved administrative land transfer. Moved by Commissioner Mills, seconded by Commissioner Dish. And then that would be the site plan, so we can take that one up first, and then we'll follow that discussion with the zoning, recognizing that they're still sort of interconnected. Is that okay with everyone, or do you want me to read the motion for the second one and we can work through them together? Any advice, Manager Kelly? Commissioner just says put them together. I'm okay with that too, but.
I don't see any reason why you can't do that as long as you have a mover, seconder for each.
We shall do that then. The Ann Arbor City Planning Commission recommends that the mayor and city council approve 1310 Wisteria rezoning petition to TC1 Transit Corridor District and accept the conditions to limit the maximum height as stated in the Statement of Conditions letter and shown on the 1310 Wisteria Woodbury zoning boundaries map, subject to executing a conditional zoning statement of conditions. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Commissioner Mills. We are now in discussion. Who would like to kick us off? Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Dish.
Okay, so first of all, welcome. Thank you. You are the nicest bunch of not happy people we've ever had in this room.
I really would like to echo Commissioner Dish's comments. You have been the most polite, unhappy people we have had at the table. So thank you for that. You're making this conversation easier. Back to you, Commissioner Dish.
Absolutely. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed, and I will not try to address them all because other people are going to want to pitch in, and but I have a couple of questions for staff to follow up on concerns that you all raised from the floor. But I think what I'm hearing from you is, or the dominant theme, of what I'm hearing from you is why TC1, and is it appropriate here? And this, I think, is a really important question to ask of this project because it is and it isn't. And so the purpose of TC1 is meant for infill. And yeah, we usually imagine, I think at one presentation, Planner DeLeo talked about putting housing on parking lots. And so that's how we usually imagine it. But that's not the only way that infill happens. Infill happens where there is existing housing and there is existing infrastructure to support that housing. And that is an easier way to do infill. But when you're putting infill in places like that, you have to look at the context. And so this is where the staff report flags that TC1 may replace the O, RE, ORL, C2B, C3P, R5, and M1 districts, and that it should only replace other zoning designations in unique and rare instances where another zoning district is entirely surrounded by the specifically mentioned districts. And this case is not that. And so the question is, what is in this proposal to recognize that, and does it go far enough? I'm going to set aside the 300-foot thing. I know we will discuss that. I suspect one reason we've split these motions is because we're interested in entertaining the zoning change, but I think none of us is really interested in asking staff to deviate from the way they normally measure things, because implications will follow from that. So, but that, I really want to set that one aside. I really want to address what I think is the less technical and more challenging question that I really want to hear from everybody on this body about. So the conditions that have been attached to this zoning, this TC1 rezoning, excuse me, recognize the problem with the context. And so what those conditions do is they limit buildings that are between 30 and 300 feet from residential properties to a 35-foot height limit. So that's a considerable reduction of the height that would normally be allowed in TC1. TC1 allows 55 or 75 within 55 and 80 feet of residential. So that's a considerable reduction of the height. And this condition includes nearly all of the part of the site that is currently zoned R3. So, but what a couple of you mentioned is that height isn't the only thing that defines a residential neighborhood. And so a question has been raised as to whether, if these conditions are meaning to address, which the staff report acknowledges that they are, they're meaning to mitigate the fact that this infill is happening where our description of TC1 says it wouldn't normally, it could rarely do. So if the height is intended to mitigate that, then do we need more than height? So do we need to consider, and I do not address this to the petitioner, to the developer, because that is not my role, but I raise it so that staff can hear and take this into negotiations with the developer, because it is not appropriate for us to negotiate at this table with a developer. But do we need to consider a restriction of mixed use? And do we also need to consider the parking? And I raise that point because one of the reasons why TC1 has the parking max that it has is because it anticipates mixed use for a lot of the acreage of a development. But if this project is limited, it's height limited, so that it can be more compatible with a residential area, is it really not appropriate for it to get anywhere near the parking maximum of TC1, because then it would be facilitating auto dependency. And TC1 is a zoning designation that is supposed to reduce auto dependency, car dependency, I should probably say, because that sounded weird, like autoimmunity. Anyway, so I want to raise those two things because that is what I felt I was hearing about your concerns. So I'm not saying to you, yes or no, I think TC1 is appropriate here. I'm saying to you, I heard you, and I think the report raises a couple of ways in which it might not be, and you pointed out some ways in which it might not be. I mean, ways beyond height, ways that height doesn't go far enough to address, so I really appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to just ask 2 questions of staff and then stop talking, because there are other people who will raise all of the incredible things that they heard and that I missed. So, but my questions for staff are Oh, and I really hope somebody addresses affordability. I'm not going to take the time to do that. I'm going to leave that to somebody else. But we heard a lot of concern about stormwater management. And my response would have been the same response as Mr. Munzel gave, that typically when you are developing in an area that was developed initially in the 70s or 80s or whenever this was, additional development improves stormwater because it brings detention and other retention sometimes, but this one is detention, where there's really not efficient management. But I did take the point that a parking garage may do different things with water and may be more of a stormwater challenge. And I'm just asking that on behalf, and I don't know. So,
what was the question about stormwater?
I would like to know are we confident that the stormwater management in this area for this project, which does plan to have a parking structure in it, will help to mitigate and not exacerbate the flooding that residents are reporting and are concerned that the bridge thing made worse. So, and then I thought there was another thing I had for staff, but it might have all been, you know what? Oh, yeah. And then I'm assuming that the city attorney's office has reviewed this conditional rezoning. Is that a correct assumption?
I've talked to one of our city attorneys several times about different aspects. That office will not do a holistic review, though, until this moves on to city council.
Okay, so we're not going to try to interpret, but we might have someone who can speak to it, how conditional zoning works, and if it is inappropriate to use conditions to limit based on what the new zoning is so that you end up with more than used to be allowed. I mean, the point was made that conditional zoning is not supposed to allow you to get over the minimum of a zoning, but I think the person was referring to R4, which is the current zoning. These conditions are being applied to TC1, and they significantly reduce the height allowed of TC1. So to me, it is consistent with my understanding of zoning conditions, but I am not a lawyer, and so I would want to know that the city attorney had seen that and didn't feel that the city would be sued and lose. The cities get sued all the time, so when you ask the city attorney, could we get sued, they'll say yes. And the question to ask them is, could we get sued and lose? And so that's the question.
All right.
So, and I don't think we need to, but the stormwater one I would like to hear.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Dish.
So on the stormwater question, are we confident that the stormwater management, especially around the parking structure, will help rather than harm mitigation and neighboring neighborhoods? So our stormwater reviewer, Peter Stevens, reviews all of these site plans for stormwater. I have 100% confidence in him. He would not advance a site plan if it did not meet every code requirement for stormwater, and that includes not making things worse. That's about my extent of talking about stormwater. So if you wanted details, I would suggest that you ask the applicants, but it has been vetted thoroughly in multiple review rounds.
Thank you, Planner Thatcher.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure he did, though. Yeah, he must have had comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Adams.
This is a question for, maybe let me start with staff. I wasn't following how the Phase 1 and Phase 2 building heights are mapping onto the height restrictions that are created by the voluntary conditions. So you've got a nice map inside the staff report that shows with colors where the heights, where you can go up to with the voluntary conditions tacked onto the TC1. What I couldn't figure out is when I was looking at the site plan and the renderings, it looked like buildings that might exceed those height limits are going to be plopped down into zones where they shouldn't be. I must be misreading something, but I'm wondering if you could explain.
I'm not exactly sure what your question is. If you're looking
Buildings
at
are too tall.
proposed zoning conditions.
I couldn't quite follow how the buildings are below the height limits that would be created with the voluntary conditions.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So let me flip to a different table for that. Right now, TC1 zoning without conditions allows.
I actually have a helpful graphic that our chair sent to me just a moment ago. Would you like me to pull that up, Mr. Weiss?
Yes, please.
Okay, just give me one moment.
And I was looking at the chart on page 6 of the staff report. So
you're looking at the picture with the colors.
Correct.
And you're asking, where is this development?
Where's the buildings going?
Where is it? There are bands of purple and green and yellow.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've got a 7-story building that, when I was looking at it, seemed to go into 35-foot maximum height zones.
It's in the purple.
It's all in the purple.
It's all in the purple. You see how wisteria and aster make sort of a square?
I got it now.
It's in the right or east half of that square.
Yep. Okay. Following. Let me stop talking and let other people ask questions.
Commissioner Mills, are you ready?
Well, I had the questions mostly about the stormwater, and I think that has been addressed.
Someone else if you're not ready.
Well, I'll just say the follow-up that I did have, or my 2 cents worth on the rezoning portion in particular. I don't think that the intent of this district is right. I actually think that the form, if it complied with the standards, is and the way that things are set back, I think the conditions along with it match. But this TC1 was not, just from its overall purpose, it was not intended for that. And we don't have a zone, I think, really intended for this right now. We will have a zone, I think, in the future, because this is something that, at least in the draft plan that is now we'll get revisions for up, calls for transition, calls for an ability to have infill like this, but also thinking about setbacks, like what are appropriate setbacks, and thinking about what are the uses, and thinking about what are the parking standards. I think we will develop that. I don't think that TC1 was built for this, and it feels like putting the conditions on it just the intent is not right. So honestly, this may be like, I know that this is maybe backwards from a lot of the way that people are, the intention of separating these out. If I agree with this idea that we should not be breaking precedent about how we are measuring buildings, and again, that should be another discussion. If we think that we need to change how we measure buildings frontage, then let's do that. I don't think that we should break that rule just for one site plan. If it weren't for that, I think that the site plan I could approve. Like, I don't think it's a bad plan necessarily, but I don't think that this is the zoning. And so that actually, I can't vote for either of the things because I don't think that this is the right zoning. I don't, and I agree that we don't have a zone right now that contemplates this super well, unless, again, one of the R4s, I think, could be supported here, but if it's already R4. So I say that, and I'm wanting to be really transparent, particularly, again, I really appreciate the thought that you put into this in your comments, and thinking about like what we ask petitioners to do is like, we have standards that we apply towards everything, and like figuring out whether you think that what is being asked for meets those standards, super useful. Like, again, thank you. And I would say in the future, if a building like this came and we had a zoning district, I don't know that I would be opposed to it. Even though once we have a zoning district where we've had a conversation about what do we do when we are thinking about infill along places where there are buses, right? But where it is not in the definition of the zone that, hey, these are the only districts that it's applied, or in rare or unique circumstances. And I don't know that this, to me, fits the rare or unique circumstance. So I just want to be super transparent with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. We'll go back to Commissioner Adams.
Maybe I might pass my questions. I agree with staff in its interpretation of the width requirement. So it has to be measured outer to outer, or else it's easily gamed, right? You could just change the amount of frontage you have along the street, and you can get around, you can game width pretty easily that way. So it has to be width to width. So I think the site plan has to be denied. I agree with staff on that. On the rezoning, as background, and I'm saying this only because a number of the public commenters, that have concerns about the project, my discretion on a rezoning is a little more limited than that. And what I mean by that is, one of the public commenters pointed out that rezoning is law, it lives forever. So necessarily my decision is agnostic on project. I'm not focused on the project. I'm focused on whether the rezoning application satisfies the legal standard and whether the district is appropriate for the site, regardless of what gets built there, because the project can fail, something else can get built. In 30 years, something might, even if this project goes forward, it could be bulldozed and something else could get built. So I'm not focused on whether the project is a good project or whether, I'm just focused on the application, I'm focused on the district. I can't impose new conditions on the application. And so, Councilmember Dish, I interpreted your question earlier about whether TC1's parking requirements are appropriate here as a potential basis to deny the application, not as a basis to impose new conditions, which we can't do. So I have an up or down vote. I can reject the conditions offered, and then past that, I get to say yes or I get to say no. The suggestion that we are creating precedent, I mean, all real estate is unique. Every application we get is unique. I'm not aware, and I am a lawyer, I'm not aware of any basis to take the position that what we do tonight has any bearing on any future TC1 applications we might receive. Everything is unique in this space. On the legal standards, so the rezoning, the UDC requires me to consider whether there has been an error that I need to correct, whether there's a change in municipal policy, or whether there are changing conditions in this area that justify a rezoning. I think the second criteria is met here. There has been a change to municipal policy that justifies a rezoning to a higher housing density district. And those are the economic development resolutions that Council passed in April of 2024 that direct us to prioritize the construction of housing at all income levels, and to flexibly interpret the legal tools we have to do that. I agree with staff that there are problems with applying TC1 to this site, and that is the purpose statement in 512.9B, which states that using this district to replace districts other than O, RE, ORL, C2B, C3, P, R5, or M1 should be a rare event, requiring special facts, and even in that case, the site should be surrounded by these districts, and those criteria are not met here. A little less than half of the site is surrounded by those districts. I still support the rezoning in spite of that, and let me explain why. Purpose statements are legislative expressions of intention. They guide the interpretation and the application of the law, but they are not the law. Our consideration of the application should be guided by, but not controlled by, those purpose statements. In addition, we have more recent legislative direction that should impact our interpretation of TC1, which again are the April 2024 economic development resolutions that direct us to be more flexible in how we construe the UDC in a manner that maximizes the construction of new housing in Ann Arbor to meet the needs of the city in a housing crisis. That expression of legislative intent to me is not only more recent, but it reflects an implicit judgment by the City Council that the text of the UDC may not match in every case the policy needs of the moment, and it should be liberally construed where reasonable to permit more housing. This rezoning by permitting additional density on the site satisfies that criteria. This is also, I think, as Commissioner Mills noted, we're not really rezoning to TC1 as written. The staff report notes that the voluntary height restrictions offered by the petitioner mitigate a lot of the adverse impacts that would happen if TC1 were put on this site as written. Next to the residential districts that border the site to the north and the east, height will be capped at 35 feet, which is identical to existing R3 and only 5 feet taller than R4 height caps on the existing zoning. This site is appropriate, I think, for higher density mixed-use housing that TC1 contemplates. It has been zoned for multifamily housing since at least 1969, and it's bordered to the south and the west by light industrial and commercial zones. The final thing I would note is that we have very recently looked at TC1 and been flexible to the point of actually doing text amendments in TC1 to support the Arbor South projects. And what the applicant is asking for here, I think, is it's less. I mean, all I have to do, I have to look at that purpose statement. I have to figure out whether I have a basis to say that that isn't controlling. And I think I have, again, by virtue of the more recent legislative intention in the economic development resolutions, and then also by the modifications made to the fully leaded version of TC1. I will stop talking.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. We can all take a break before you have to follow Commissioner Adams if you want. Not an actual break, but just like a breather break. Okay, great. Commissioner Abrams, and then Commissioner Dish.
I might follow Commissioner Adams with some questions for Commissioner Adams, but I have questions for everyone, so bear with me, please. The first question I have is a procedural question, perhaps for staff, which is that because a rezoning petition requires an area plan, if we split the two and we say there's not support at the table for the site plan because it doesn't meet the code, how do we understand procedurally approving the rezoning request with a insufficient site plan or no area plan?
The advice that we got yesterday was, and I'm sorry that I wasn't part of that conversation directly, I heard it after the fact, but that it's okay for the two to be separated. We would obviously have to explain what happened to City Council and why they would not match up and be presented together. That probably doesn't answer your question, but
yeah. It doesn't, I don't know really how to frame it. I don't know whether it's a legal question or just a process question, but hypothetically, if the rezoning gets approved, for the record, it gets paired with this wrong site plan. It doesn't, we haven't done that before as far as I understand.
Right, I understand what you're saying. It wouldn't be that they're paired. It was decided that you just have to have one or the other go with the rezoning, and that the rezoning can stand on its own without the approval of the area plan or the site plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess if I'm looking at the UDC, it just says that the application has to contain it. It doesn't say that we have to like it.
It's a little wonky.
But we aren't approving it as a plan. We are simply looking at it as part of our, okay, got it. Yeah. Thank you. My next question would be for Commissioner Adams. Can you, what you said about the specific purpose statement was illuminating for me, but could you help me understand why it is not the law? Or what things in the UDC are the law and which things are not the law?
Well,
recognizing that Commissioner Adams is not the city attorney, nor is he the planning commission attorney, and is not giving us legal advice.
Speaking as yourself.
Thank you.
Recovering litigator. So I'm interpreting it as, of course, everything in the UDC is the law, but it's an expression of purpose by virtue of how it's described in the UDC as a purpose statement, and it doesn't prohibit me from doing it. It says you shouldn't probably do this, and this is what we intended, and that's kind of how it's labeled, and that's why I'm interpreting it that way. I'd feel differently if other words were used later on in tables and other areas of the UDC that said "thou shalt not" or that type of thing. But I went back and pulled the staff reports associated with the ordinance and feel relatively sound in the conclusion that TC1 is not unlawful to use here, that we have discretion to make a judgment on that. The purpose statement in there counsels against it, but then I've got stuff that comes after that that says, be creative and flexible in how you interpret this document because it's not meeting our policy needs. So I don't know how to, I think the more recent thing should control. And council came along after the fact and said, we've got a big problem on our hands and we need to be more aggressive in how we approve rezonings. So that's why I'm taking the position that I'm taking.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
And again, just for the record, Commissioner Adams is not legal counsel to this commission, nor to the city, and his legal advice is his own.
Take it at your own risk. No, I'm kidding. And then my next question maybe starts with staff and then moves to the petitioner, which is, was there a conversation or consideration of PUD as opposed to rezoning to TC1?
The application was for TC1 with conditions. Certainly that was brought up, but there wasn't a lengthy discussion of it or anything because it was not what the applicant desired.
Okay. Is there any guidance or practice that you follow as city staff when thinking about weighing the pros and cons of a rezoning with conditions versus a PUD?
I wouldn't compare them directly. I mean, if you or someone asked us to do that, we could certainly do that. I hate to say it, but generally people avoid PUDs because it costs a lot more because you have to pay into affordable housing or provide units. I don't know that that was the case here, and I'm not trying to imply that it was, but we've seen some more creative applications.
Okay. Great. Okay. And then maybe to the petitioner, I could pose the same question, whether or not you considered a PUD, and if not, why not? And a secondary question would be, could you say something about the rezoning petition for all of the parcels as opposed to just the R4C portion which you plan to redevelop, and if there are plans for other portions of the site?
So there were multiple questions there.
PUD, question mark, and rezoning everything versus just rezoning the R4C area that is slated for redevelopment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So PUD, there's a section in the language of when a PUD is permitted or allowed, and that you'll have to. I'm not going to quote verbatim, but it basically it says you can't do a PUD if you could do what you want to do another way. And so this was the other way was with the TC1. Then the other question you asked about was the selective rezoning of a smaller parcel. The problem is the way that TC1 is written. If you didn't rezone the whole property, then the piece that you're actually developing today would be right next to an R, and therefore you'd be limited to 30 feet. So you have to do the whole property in order to get the advantages of the increased height for more efficient use of the land. Does that make sense?
It does. And no, I just wanted everybody to hear. And then are there any plans currently to redevelop the other portions of the site?
No, there are no current plans. I'm going to say it's going to depend on how the Phase 1 and Phase 2A and 2B are received. If they're well received and they lease up, that may encourage the developer, the owners, to proceed with future migration towards the west, towards the South Industrial. There are questions of why did we pick this part of the site to start with, and part of that goes to Commissioner Dish's question about infill, and part of it goes to the question of someone during the public comment. We're starting with the parking lot. Basically, we're starting with an area of the site that is currently mostly undeveloped. Phase 1 has to be built on a part of the site that doesn't take away current leased units out of the leasing pool. And so most of what we are redeveloping is open space between the parking lot and the street and an existing parking lot. The second phase also includes a new clubhouse-type facilities, community gathering spaces for the entire complex, so that both new and existing residents can socialize in a new facility, modern, expanded to accommodate the greater number of people. So we are infilling, and we have to do it in a way that doesn't take units offline when we start the project. So those are other considerations.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I can wrap up. I'll just say thank you to all of you who came and made public comment. I really appreciated hearing from you and reading the emails that came through. I'll just say I'm struggling with this decision. I really understand the rationale on both sides. I think that I am very, very much in favor of increasing housing supply and increased density in Ann Arbor. I think I've gone on the record a lot saying that, and my votes usually back that up. In this case, I think I'm a little bit, part of my struggle is what Commissioner Mills pointed out, which is that I think it's revealing that we actually have a hole or like a gap in our zoning, and I wish that we had a district that seemed like a better fit to me. But so part of my struggle is that it feels inappropriate to go to TC1 and then restrict its height, and it feels like a funny fit to me, and yet I am reluctant to vote against it because I do think that the increased density is something that we really, 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 really need. I was hung up on the specific purpose statement and kind of voting to do something that seems to just so clearly violate what we've written in the UDC, but I am convinced actually by Commissioner Adams' rationale, and so that was very helpful for me, and to be reminded also of the economic development resolution and the bearing that that should have on our decision making. I was reassured by staff on the area plan question. So for me, the outstanding one is, and I think there are changing conditions in the municipality, so I agree that there's standing for the rezoning petition. I think TC1 still feels a little bit tough. So I'm leaning yes, but just to be transparent about my deliberation, that's my struggle. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Abrams. Commissioner Weatherby.
Okay. First of all, thank you to all the neighbors. And as someone who lives in a neighborhood that has changed a lot in the last 20 years, 30 years since we've lived there, change will most likely happen here, regardless of of this vote. The owners obviously are prepared to do something different with their property. And this is not city property. It's nothing that we can we can determine yes or no on these plans based on what our current rules and regulations are. But we don't get to say, oh, we want 3 stories here, we want 5 stories here, we want a golf course or a this or a that, or that's just not in our purview. And it feels weird. The reason I'm sitting here is because I was objecting to development in my neighborhood 30 years ago. So I understand and I very much sympathize, because it is, if we all could play Sim City and design our cities the way we want them, that from our lived experience, they would look different. But, we are working with someone who owns 45 acres, and they have say in what they own, just like you have say in what you own on your property. So just to sort of say, regardless of what we vote here, it is likely that changes are going to happen in your area. And I hope you maintain your friendliness and your neighborliness and your fun dog interactions, even through changes, because that is what makes Ann Arbor good. It's what makes these neighborhoods great. And one advantage to having more neighbors is more dogs. So my neighborhood has a lot more dogs now, and it's actually kind of great. But just regardless of how we vote or what just be aware that this is not our property and it's not the city's property. And, changes will most likely happen. It's not 100%. Sometimes projects don't go through. But that's just to say, and thank you all for coming and being sort of shining lights of neighborhoods, even when you disagree with a project. That's not what we always hear, so it is appreciated, definitely. For me, I find TC1 a very awkward fit here. It just, if these buildings were multi-use and up on the corridor, and I could be more convinced, but that's not what that's not what we're looking at. And so for me, TC1, and I get that, yes, we're supposed to be flexible and we're supposed to be creative, but also this project has been, I think the first meeting with the neighbors was in 2023. So it's been in the process since before those letters came through from council, and it just feels like a really awkward fit. It's like TC1 with all these conditions that make it not TC1, and I don't see it as, and that feels weird to me. It feels uncomfortable, and like if we all got to just pick what parts of each zoning code we liked, that would make things maybe easier or harder. I don't know, but it just seems to me it's a very uncomfortable fit, and I don't think it is appropriate here. And I could say more about that, but I think that's the gist of it. Is I don't see how TC1, this area and what is being recommended, conforms to TC1. I don't see it.
Thank you, Commissioner Weatherby. Commissioner, I overlooked you when you had your hand up. Are you okay? Okay, great. Okay, Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm just going to echo, you guys have, like this, it's very refreshing to have meetings where like we can have this dialogue and nobody comes and just yells at us. So thank you. Thank you for being engaged, and thank you for being respectful. And I can tell you guys love your community, which is amazing. I agree with Commissioner Weatherby that change will most likely happen here, whether with this project or with something else. 5 years after this is potentially rezoned as an outcome of our new comprehensive plan. We know TC1 is not perfect, and we don't have a zoning district currently that works for what this seems to be trying to do. But I agree, again, with Commissioner Weatherby. I feel like imposing these conditions on TC1 doesn't really make it TC1. It seems like we're trying to skirt around a PUD. TC1 also, the original intent was mixed-use development along transit corridors, which industrial is. But what I'm seeing here is a 40-something acre site that will remain largely residential, maybe. I mean, we don't know, because we're only seeing a little bit of the redevelopment, and we heard that there are no current plans to redevelop the rest of the site. So again, to agree with Commissioner Weatherby, I mean, if we saw something that was along industrial that had the height, that had the mixed use, like maybe I would feel differently, but also I don't know, because these conditions, again, do not make it TC1. We also heard and read from the public concerns about, it was height, I think the luxuriness of the development, potential cost of the rents. And I just want to sort of throw out there, my guess is that a smaller scale 3 to 4 story building that might feel like it fits a little bit better, might be feel like the rents should be lower, would not pencil in this current climate with development costs the way that they are. The last thing, because I whispered this to Commissioner Dish and she wanted me to say it out loud. I think with the stormwater, I fully trust Peter Stevens and his analysis, and that everything that with this particular plan would not create more concerns in the neighborhoods to the north. But with I don't think a parking garage itself, because it's a parking garage, does something worse than a residential building. It's just impervious surface and how that's all calculated. So I guess I'll wrap up this. I think I'm leaning no, just so everyone knows my transparency, but I fully respect the opinions of my colleagues.
Great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Norton, we haven't heard from you. Would you like to chime in?
I'm having trouble with this one as well. This area is going to change. It's in an area that is designated under the CLUP, if the CLUP gets adopted as it's currently configured, to be a transition zone, which would envision something more dynamic and different and dense and intense than what's there now. But we haven't worked through what that will mean yet, or how that will fit in different places. And I don't think that it's an automatic jump that TC1 is an approximation of what might happen in a transition zone. I don't see this as fitting the TC zone. I will respectfully disagree with my colleague. I think this purpose statement of what a TC1 district is to be for is pretty clear. And it's pretty clear that you shouldn't divert from this kind of industrial infill context along an active corridor unless there are exceptional reasons to do that. We have gotten direction subsequent to that there's a housing crisis in the city. We should be acting on that, but we are through the CLUP and through the rezoning changes that we will make in light of the CLUP. That's coming. I know it's not going to happen tomorrow, but that's the direction we're heading. I think that's the appropriate place to deal with these kinds of issues rather than force-fitting a zoning district we have now that doesn't really work and doesn't really fit on the site. So I'm sympathetic with the folks who are concerned that their neighborhood is going to change. It's going to change. This is a place that is ripe to be developed at a more dense location. And I know that a 7-story structure sounds horrific. My guess is once it was up, people would adjust to it and it would be fine. I live in the Old West Side. I heard screams of terror when the new structures on Main Street were going up. This is going to destroy the neighborhood. Now I ask my neighbors, has it destroyed the neighborhood? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? It's fine. What's the problem? So I know when we're at the front end of change, it's really scary. At the back end of change, it's often not as bad as what it turned out to be. Maybe some folks don't really like those structures, but I don't think they've been as devastating as the concerns. So I hear you. I'm sympathetic with you. But I also think it's going to change, and we can't just, because it's going to change, we should get rid of it. Having said that, this TC1 thing it doesn't seem to me that this is what TC1 intended. And I get the logic that the proponent is saying that we have to do the whole thing to make it work, but that just speaks to the fact that it doesn't work here unless you do the whole district. And is it really necessary on its face, all things stepping back, to rezone this whole area as TC1 to fulfill the purpose of TC1? I don't see that. I think it's asking to rezone too much area for what this project would be. And yeah, you would separate the project from the rezoning, but if you take out the project that's proposed, then you really ask, well, is this rezoning necessary? Why would it be necessary if we don't have a project here that could credibly work with that new rezoning that would fit? So I'm kind of thinking through this on my own. I think as much as I want to take up the spirit of what we're trying to do through the CLUP and make it work, I think this is premature and it doesn't fit for what the zoning currently calls for, so I'm inclined to vote against it.
Thank you, Commissioner Norton. Commissioner Dish, are you ready? Otherwise, I'll give my comments. No, I can wait.
Does he like to have the last word?
No. I don't have to have the last word. I'm happy to
I'm happy
to
for
defer.
you to go, and then if you have
I'm actually going to work through some of the comments that we haven't talked about.
That was what I was going to do too, so I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. So the first thing, if Planner Kelly could put back up the TC1. I heard that the TC1 would permit a 7-story building abutting my neighborhood. I don't think that is true. I think the height would be 55 feet, and currently our UDC permits up to 40 if you meet certain standards like our sustainability. So about 15 feet higher than that. And I think there would be still some buffering that would occur between, I know we got rid of the conflicting land use from residential to residential, but I think it wouldn't be certainly directly abutting without any setbacks. So I wanted to address that one. I think the petitioner addressed the stormwater. We have robust stormwater mitigation. Any new development that comes into the city must update the stormwater. Even St. Paul's, when they were talking, they are going to have to do some things to address stormwater. That is a huge concern of the city. It's both for infrastructure, it's also to help in your neighborhood. And so I don't think there is stormwater management on the site right now in these acres. So whatever they put in is going to be an improvement from what's on the site today. So I wanted to address that concern that I heard. I agree. This is a comment not from actually it is a comment from the audience. It's from Mr. Garber. I agree with Mr. Garber. This is too much parking. It's entirely too much parking. If you are parked in the way that Mr. Garber has calculated at 1.3 per unit or 1.5 per unit, it's twice what we saw from Beekman. Beekman told us it was 0.7, and I would say, however this comes, whenever it comes, if you could get to 0.7, I think that would be an improvement. That's a 50% reduction from what I believe you have today. Our neighbor in the back talked about the fact that she would be directly, I don't know your pronouns, that they would be directly impacted by this development. It sounded like from the architect, Mr. Moore, that the first phase doesn't take any units off, and I imagine that if you're displacing someone in the second phase, you're going to offer them space in the newly constructed phase. Is that true? That's a question for the petitioner. Please answer it.
So my client is also the management company, and they have said they're going to work to relocate people in the units that are going to be demolished in phase 2, either to similar units in the buildings that are not being developed, because they turn over, they become available. So you might get exactly the same unit configuration in a different building, or perhaps in the new structure. But they're definitely going to work to help people.
And that would be a lot of goodwill for your client to reassure their current tenants that there would be space made for them. I think that would help everybody as you think about this. And this is the hard part of redevelopment, is when redevelopment occurs, someone gets displaced. And I'm sitting very comfortably, I'm very housed, I'm not at the subject of redevelopment. And so I'm just asking this question to make sure that some reassuring communication can be given so that the tenants that are there or the residents that are there have some confidence that they won't be displaced permanently. Okay, let's see. Oh, traffic. Oh, Planner Thatcher has left. Oh, Planner Thatcher is back. This did not trigger a traffic study because the increase in units would not have tripped that trigger. Is that correct?
I would have to look that up.
Okay. There is one?
I looked it up because I saw that it was required as an area plan, a traffic transportation impact analysis.
Yeah.
So it's on stream.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any demonstrative impact to traffic.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yes, you could look that up.
Overwhelming conclusion. Yeah.
Yes. Our neighbor here in the front asked, quoting Section 5.20 about screening. So if this does move forward, I guess the question would be to the petitioner. Would the petitioner be agreeable to add any additional screening as they interface with the neighbors to the north?
As a matter of fact, I just got a text from the ownership group, and
Look at
they
that.
are willing to investigate additional screening, as has been requested, and also adding a condition about residential use only on the east and the north side, and removing potentially one story of the parking deck. If it's tabled tonight, we'll have the opportunity to do the analysis and decide, yes, we can add 15 more trees, 20 more trees. Yes, maybe we can add that condition about residential uses only on the north and east side of Astor/Wisteria, and perhaps remove one level of parking. We'd like the opportunity to be able to do that analysis if you feel you could table it.
Okay. Mr. Garber asked about heating units. Sorry, Mr. Moore, if you can stay. Do you have any response to him of the kind of heating that you plan to use in the development?
I will defer to the lead architect on that because they've been doing the analysis of the systems engineering.
Sure, thank you.
While not fully decided, it'll likely be air-to-air heat pump, all electric air-to-air heat pump. I've worked on thousands of apartment buildings and units, and VRF almost never comes to the table on the ones that I've worked on, usually meant for very high-rise buildings, in my opinion.
Okay. Did you find that?
Yes. So it's a 40-page report, but there is luckily an executive summary on page 4. And the takeaway is that the maximum increase in overall intersection delay is less than 1 second.
Okay. Another neighbor brought up that it was between either the Chicago person or the person who cleans the drains, that I'm sorry, there's so many people, and I try to write down your names, and then I've lost track of you. I apologize. But we are listening, and as you can see, we're just systematically going through the things that you've asked us to consider. That the zoning that TC1 is allowed to replace would not have had residential in it. And I just wanted to clarify and ask staff to correct me. I know office, some of the commercial districts permit residential. So when I was looking in the table, I'm looking at the, let's see, August 10th, 2025 UDC edition, the 11th edition. I'm on page 35. I see office C1, D1, D2, C2B, C3, and TC1 all have permitted residential households in. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of the districts that it is intended to replace would and could have residential. They might not have it to the same height and the density, but it is permitted. And you can look this up yourself. It's under section 5 in our UDC, subsection 15.1. It's our primary uses table, which go by zone and tell you what is permitted in each of the zones. Okay. Commissioner Diss, I'm going to make my comments and then I'll turn it to you and then see where we are. Is that okay? I agree with the table that, well, the table is split, I should say, from my whipping of the votes. And I think I agree that TC1, for all intents and purposes, is not the right zone. But it is the closest zone in our UDC to achieve what the petitioner wants to achieve. And one of the things that I have learned sitting at the table for the last 6 years is petitioners can request rezonings for anything and at any time. It's just really a request that they can make. And they are paying attention to the direction of the city. So they are listening to the legislative body. They're listening to what that body is saying as candidates run to represent us in the city. And as everyone in this room recognizes and understands and have echoed and all agree, and let me just be the next person to say thank you so much for just your joyful opposition. Like, I want to, like, have you all come back and teach folks how to, like, joyfully oppose things, because it was just delightful listening to you as you were just like, no, no, no. But it was happy, and you were delighted to be here and to talk with us, and it didn't feel like it's adversarial. And everyone at the table has acknowledged it, because we sit at this table and we hear from a lot of people. And over the length of time that we've been working on the comprehensive land use, we've heard from thousands of people, and a lot of people make assumptions about us that are not true. We are your neighbors. I am your neighbor. I understand what it means to have your neighborhood changed. One of you asked, would you like to have 342 new neighbors? And unfortunately for you, my answer is an enthusiastic yes. I would love to have 342 new neighbors, but my city council council members said no in my neighborhood. They blocked us from increasing the residential density in the neighborhood that I live in, which is a R1C. I wanted it to have as much density as possible, and I'm still a little angry about that. But I'm glad to be in this conversation with you because I think you all see what the challenges are. The challenges are we're living in a changing environment. We live in a great place. People want to live here. And because they want to live here, they put demands on us, which means we have to either make space for them or we have to resist them. And you are in that thin space of this change. And we're here and we're trying to listen. We're trying to hear what you're saying, what our UDC says, what our staff says, and we're trying to make the best decision. Let me just inform you of what's going to happen, and then I'll make my comments. Whether this passes at this table or not, we are only making a recommendation. So short of us tabling it and allowing the petitioner to come back, you heard that from Mr. Moore, he's subtly put that into his comments that we could table this and someone at the table would have to take that up as a motion. This will proceed to City Council. And City Council, and Commissioner Dish can correct me, will have two readings. They'll have a first reading, which generally passes, and then they will have a second reading. And at each reading, they'll have a public hearing. So your opportunities to talk joyfully about your opposition continue. And you would have two more chances to do that, as well as your own advocacy with your direct council members. Does that all make sense? Okay. I have the privilege of the table to talk to you, and you can talk back in this way. So I agree. TC1 is not the best zoning district, but it is the only one right now because we're updating our 24-year-old plan, which didn't imagine that the University of Michigan would be the largest state university in Michigan. It didn't imagine that the university would hire 26,000 new employees. It did not imagine that the University of Michigan would absorb an entire hospital system. It did not imagine that the university would grow almost unabated by 5,000 new students year over year. It did not imagine that the university would not build more housing for those students. You all know that it's been since 1964 that the university has built residential housing in the downtown area on this side of town. It's been a long, long time since they've built housing. Our comprehensive land use plan that we are operating under did not imagine that environment at all. And this is where we find ourselves, in this thin space, this in-between. So I'm inclined to vote in favor of the rezoning, to deny the site plan because I agree with staff. It does not meet the standard, and staff has discretion there. And if the table votes the way that I have counted, this will fail here at the table, but it will advance to City Council, and you'll have an additional conversation with them. With that, Commissioner Dish.
Thank you, Commissioner Weich. So I do want to address a couple of times affordability came up, and I do want to talk about that because this is tough. And also, Mr. Moore has given us an opening to talk about that with him, which I will come to in a moment, Mr. Moore, so you don't have to stand up yet. But so there are a couple of pathways to affordability, and one is to increase supply, and the other is to publicly subsidize housing. Ann Arbor is taking both of those pathways. We are increasing supply. The comprehensive land use plan, which is what Commissioner Norton is referring to when he speaks of the club. We live with it, so we call it by its nickname. We are doing that. It is, the comprehensive land use plan envisions greater density in the near campus areas and in downtown, just as we're seeing now. It envisions some kind of increase in areas like yours, which that is the least clear, least well articulated part of the plan. And so I think everyone here is right that your neighborhood is going to change. My neighborhood will change. Thanks to you all who voted for the affordable housing millage, we have 1,000 units in the pipeline right now. Some of them rising into the air in Carytown of income-eligible affordable housing that's open to people that average at 60% of the area median income. Now, neither of this addresses what you are talking about, which is housing for you or housing for people who are in their 30s, because you are not in the income-eligible piece. And you are not interested in the form of housing if you could pay for it, and many of you wouldn't be able to pay for the high tower housing that is coming in the city. So, as Commissioner Hammerschmidt said, it is true that a 3 or 4 story building on this site would feel like it fit the surroundings better, but it definitely wouldn't be cheaper. The only way for it to be affordable would be if it were subsidized. I hope that we will be able to move forward using the state's new brownfield housing law to subsidize some housing to achieve missing middle housing. But that is the only way we can do it. What we do not have is what Chicago has, which is the ability to mandate that if you build here, you have to include some percentage of affordable housing in your building. It's a wonderful law. It is referred to as inclusionary zoning, which is an odd word, but we don't have that legal ability. It's not legal in Michigan. So for the missing middle, what do we do? Well, we really have to think about displacement, and I feel as though this is really one of the first times I've heard a petitioner talk about having a plan for displacement. So, Mr. Moore, I wondered if I could ask you a few more questions about the possibilities for residents who will need to be relocated during construction of Phase 2. Do you have any idea of how many people you might be talking about? And do you have any idea of the rate of turnover in your units? And so would it be, if you're within 6 months of completing Phase 2, would you hold empty units for people, or starting Phase 2, would you be holding units for folks who are going to be displaced by it? I'd love to hear some details on that.
Yeah, I would have to get more information from the ownership group. And again, if we were able to do a tabling tonight, I could collect that data from them. I don't have that here with me tonight. I know that in our public our citizens participation meeting, they indicated that they would relocate people from similar units. Maybe the unit is oriented east and the new one is oriented north, but it would be the same floor plan, the same layout, and the same level of interior finishes. So if the units they're living in had upgraded appliances, they would get the same thing, because they would just take the appliances that were in the units that were going to be demolished and wheel them across the complex. But I don't know the numbers or the hold times. I do know that in terms of developing the project, it would be a minimum of 3 years before Phase 1, any new units came on board. And then another 2 years before Phase 2A or 2B, if they were done at the same time, could come on board. So it's not a quick thing to happen. It's a long process. And I would have to get the data from my clients as to how many units turn over in any given year.
Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate your bringing that up. That long lead time really does make it possible that no one would have to leave because they weren't able to buy into the new units, because I think it is clear that many people will not be able to do that. So if that's information that you could gather, I would appreciate it. And I would love it if we started to have models for people to think about displacement, because it's a real thing. And I really appreciate your bringing it up. So I am in support of this rezoning. I am very happy that Chair Weich put words to what I couldn't articulate, which is that TC1 is not the right zone, but it is the closest zone to achieve what the petitioner wants to achieve. I don't have a problem with TC1 with conditions that kind of make it not really look like TC1 anymore, because we don't have transition, and we have never at this table said that we were going to stop development and stop approving things because the club hadn't been implemented yet and we didn't get the toys that we're going to get, or I should say tools.
Yeah, I was going to say tools.
Yeah, tools, although like I think zoning is fun. So I just don't have a problem with that. I agree with Commissioner Adams, and I believe I've heard this in conversations with staff, that I'm losing my notes a minute. Yep, that the purpose statement does not have the status of a rule. But I also agree with Commissioner Norton that it is not something to be simply disregarded. So it is something that flags the need for us to exercise judgment about context. And a judgment about context is made in the staff report, which is that conditions are being used to recognize the context, which is that there's a residential context here. We heard some really thoughtful comments from the floor about, well, here's some other things you should think about if you want to adapt this to a residential context. I'm completely comfortable with that unless we hear legal advice between now and the city council meeting that it's an inappropriate way of moving forward. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to second guess or overthink this. This is a project that is consistent with things that I have been unequivocal in my support for. And there has been, I believe, an extraordinary amount of care taken to think about how this project can meet city goals without trampling on people's current neighborhood and lives. And the reality is that this city is changing because of all the reasons that Chair Wedge said. So I'm cool with it. I think one last thing would be the concerns raised about a seventh floor open clubhouse. Yeah, thank you. I was thinking that you never hear any noise from the Verve, but then I remembered that it's like 100 stories tall. So it might be that something needs to be done. I know the Verve does have fencing and some stuff. Yeah. What's that called? The plastic stuff.
That doesn't do anything for the sound.
Okay, that doesn't do anything. So anyway, please think about that as well. I have a question for staff, which is the developer has indicated, the petitioner has indicated a willingness to consider some of the things that have come up and incorporate them into conditions. And would it be appropriate to do a motion to table and bring it back to Planning Commission? Or would it be simpler to let the commissioners, we can just vote, and these changes could, if they are made, that would be great. If it comes to council with changes that reflect concerns that were raised at Planning Commission that may affect council's evaluation. So even though it would probably be a negative vote from CPC, council would be able to see something that evolved. So I'm just asking, if I would like to see some changes, but am very much in support of this project, should I make a motion to table or should we just vote?
I would say just vote. It would be my opinion that if the developer wishes to offer additional voluntary conditions, that they could submit a letter of that intention and it could accompany the materials that proceed to council. I don't think there's a value in holding additional meeting time just for that item if that's the specific item in question. I don't think it's necessary. I think a vote would be perfectly appropriate right now.
And having said that, someone can make a motion to table if they choose, and then we would consider it at the table, correct? You are advising against it, but it can still happen.
That is correct. You do have an open agenda.
Yes, that we have not yet canceled because the chair
has not yet been canceled.
And the planning manager have not met to cancel it. Hold on, Mr. Moore. So what do you want to do, Commissioner Dish? Because you really have the con right now.
I don't know if I want to table, and I'm happy to hear from Mr. Moore. I just wanted to mention about the PUD thing.
What would you like to hear from him?
I would just like to hear, I don't know, does 2 weeks matter? Whatever. But I did want to say there are many reasons why we don't do PUDs. And the biggest reason is because a PUD is a zoning code that is utterly unique to a single project. And the entire point of doing a comprehensive land use plan is that we get away from project by project zoning. And so I wanted to just reflect that one may opt not to go for a PUD, not because they're trying to skirt something that would be expensive. I think the conditions that are being imposed on this zoning are expensive. They may be skirting it for perfectly appropriate reasons, which is it's better to rezone this whole site because that will facilitate future change, which is what we're looking for. So that's all I wanted to say. So, Mr. Moore, what is your preference?
So I just wanted to point out that the other things we were talking about reevaluating would be a potential modification to the landscape plan and to the site plan to remove one layer of parking. So it's more than just the conditional use change to residential only. And I don't know if that colors your answer.
If there's interest in updating the site plan, I don't think we would table to a date certain.
Right.
I'm interested in what Ms. Thatcher, if she has any reflections on this.
The items that Mr. Moore is talking about adding or changing aren't things that would require a lot of staff review or anything. So it would really be for your benefit. Reducing parking and adding landscaping, great. But I think that you could accomplish the same thing by just sending it on to council. But if you want to see it.
I mean, also, we would
option.
request a compliance site.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Mills, I was going to come back to you anyway, so here we are. I was, after Commissioner Dish.
Oh, I didn't even know that I signaled a hand raise. Okay. Actually, the idea, again, that what we still haven't talked about, and I haven't heard disagreement about this, the site plan doesn't comply.
Correct.
Even with a different parking garage, the site plan still wouldn't comply. Correct. And I don't feel comfortable, actually, this site plan could not be built. And so I don't know what could be built. And that is one of the reasons why I'm not personally comfortable. There were lots of things that happened along the way that I appreciate our conversation. Also, just like we've been loving on the audience today, I want to love on us. We can respectfully disagree. And also, not be set in our ways. So, I think this is hard, right? And I also want to say, the argument, I would just say, and sorry that I'm picking on you a little bit, Commissioner Dish, but I don't see personally the difference between a PUD and a rezoning with conditions. That is a make your own thing. And so in my mind, it's not that different. I know, and in particular, where a PUD is because we don't have the thing. We don't have a zoning district. And so I'm not pushing this to a PUD, but I do see those things I don't think it's a good practice to have zoning districts with a whole bunch of conditions spread throughout the city, because then when we go to rezone, it looks like it's the same thing, but it's not, because it actually should have a little asterisk next to it because it's TC1 plus. And so I think you know that I'm not super fond of PUDs generally, but I actually think conditions make it even more difficult to understand what is allowed on the property next door, because it looks on the map like it is TC1, just for what it's worth. That's my 2 cents. So I for those reasons, I actually don't know, even if we tabled this, that my vote's going to change. I'm just going to be real clear. And so I'm not going to propose tabling, but that's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Norton.
I appreciate the observations and the analysis that's going on here, and I am honestly really struggling with this. I can see both sides well, but I keep coming back to there's a project that's being proposed that staff is telling us doesn't comply with the site design requirements. We should not approve it. I don't know what would work that would pencil in for the developer that would also survive, would pass site plan review. And if we can't be sure that there's a project that could be built here that would be financially feasible, that would satisfy site plan, then where's the necessity to do the rezoning to TC1? So you're not supposed to think about a rezoning in the context of a specific project. But if there's no project here that doesn't work, where's the necessity to rezone this to CC1? And if it's necessary to do it here, then why isn't it necessary to do it everywhere in the city that's along a corridor? So I'm having a really hard time disconnecting the feasibility of this project as designed with the need to do the rezoning. And if it's not possible to do the project as designed, we can't get it through the site plan, then where's the necessity for the rezoning? So I still am kind of falling down on the side. This is a problem enough shoehorning to try and get TC1 to work here for a project that isn't gonna, that we're being told, and I agree with, doesn't pass the site design requirements. I don't see the logic. And maybe if it were tabled and they could do a quick redesign, that would solve that problem. But it sounds like that would take longer than, that would be a long and involved process.
Yeah, that would be another staff review round.
Yeah, so
at a minimum.
I'm kind of back. I understand the tremendous need to approve projects. I understand that we're not supposed to stop new development while we're trying to update the comprehensive land use plan, but that doesn't mean that we should disregard what the whole purpose of how the system is supposed to work and the fact that we are proceeding with making the changes that are needing to facilitate the kind of growth and development we want to see. I think I just convinced myself I'm still falling down on the side.
That's what it sounds like.
This is a problematic proposal.
All right, I think we're ready to vote. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
If I could just add that our current comprehensive plan is only 16 years old. I meant to say that earlier.
Oh, did I say 24?
You can't vote.
Or did I say
25?
19? I thought I said 19.
25. It's not quite that bad.
Okay, I was off by 3 years.
So on the first motion as presented.
Oh, I'm sorry, you'll have to, the first motion, everyone, is for the site plan dated November 19th. Okay.
And the development agreement contingent upon administrative land transfer. I also wanted to just mention that since you are an even number this evening, that if it is split evenly, that is a denial recommendation and would be forwarded with the vote count to City Council as such. Commissioner Norton.
This is for the site plan.
For the site plan and development agreement.
No.
Commissioner Adams.
No.
Commissioner Weatherby.
No.
Commissioner Mills.
No.
Councilmember Dish.
No.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
No.
Commissioner Abrams.
No.
And Commissioner Weish.
No.
That fails. And will be recommended for denial to City Council. On your second motion as presented to approve the petition to Transit Corridor District and accept conditions, fully stated earlier in the evening. Commissioner Norton.
No.
Commissioner Adams.
This is rezoning, correct?
Yes, the rezoning petition.
Yes.
Commissioner Weatherby.
No.
Commissioner Mills.
No.
Councilmember Dish.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
No.
Commissioner Abrams.
Yes.
And Commissioner Weish.
Yes.
Okay, so since that is a split vote, that fails and will be recommended to City Council as a denial.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you all so much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us and being joyful objectors. Really appreciated it. That takes us to agenda item 11A, other business. There is none. And now we are at agenda item number 12. This is a second opportunity for individuals to speak up to 3 minutes on any issue. We'll first hear from those of you present. Some of you are leaving. Then remote participants. To speak remotely, press star 9 if on phone, or use the raise hand feature if on Zoom. For phone access, dial 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will identify callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number and by their name if on Zoom. You'll hear an announcement when it's your turn to speak. Please, please ensure that you're in a quiet area and mute any background noise. For all participants, whether remote or in person, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present who would like to address us at this time? Hi, Sam.
Hi, yes. Sam Homan, 1451 Kohler again. To Commissioner Bill's point, you need an R4 zone that's designed to accommodate 502s, which is what this is proposing. So, 85-foot height limit, and I recommend keeping 300-foot rule for building width. There is another matter of business that I've been meaning to bring to the Planning Commission since I happen to be here tonight. I thought I would do it now. And this is going to sound like the most pedantic thing in the world. Architectural standards for fences. I have a very small overlap behind my garage with a commercial property on Packard, and they have built, it's a chain link fence, and apparently in the 60s there used to be a little gate there so you could get to it. And they took a bunch of just junk and it's the gates that fold open for chain link fences. They just stapled them to a utility pole to fill in that gap at weird angles. And I had the zoning coordinator come out to my house to look at it. I can show you some pictures. And there are no architectural standards for fences in the city. So, so I would ask that you consider updating the architectural standards just to say that fences can't be made out of junk and they need to be orderly or something like that. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who'd like to address us at this time? Manager Kelly, do we have remote participants who'd like to address us? Seeing none, I'll close the last public comment of this meeting. Is there, Commissioner Dish, I went to look for, but can you tell me again what your comment about Mr. Hilton was at the beginning? I have his comments up now.
I thought that he asked us to have the timeline reflect that Ann Arbor had passed an open housing ordinance.
Okay, yes, I will look again at the edits that Planner Bennett proposed and see if those are included. I'm not sure. Sure. Okay, thank you. Any, yes, Commissioner Norton, I was going to ask, any other commission proposed business? Commissioner Norton.
Not proposed business, but I forgot something that I might have conveyed during the reports back from subcommittees.
Oh, sure.
I'm on the Stormwater Advisory Group.
Yes.
We had a meeting. It turns out the city of Ann Arbor has the ability to do more fine-tuned modeling and flood control, floodplain mapping than what the FEMA guidelines promote. So Planner Bennett and I were both at this meeting, and at the end of the meeting, we were urging them strongly to start moving expeditiously toward developing that data in a way that we could update our zoning code provisions so that we would have better information to act on. So there is some movement in that direction. So hopefully they'll be proceeding with that. I thought I would just convey that to you. That group is actively meeting and they're working to update the stormwater management plan and do some better analysis for us.
Great, thank you. Any other commissioners? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Dish, seconded by Commissioner Mills. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Before